Hey everyone, my name is Senator Roy. Thank you for, selecting me as your PO this session. Not that there's anyone else running, but if it's okay with the judges, I'll start with my procedure. So I do run a closed chamber as permitted by NSDA guidelines. So please do either text in the chat or call a point of personal privilege, and you guys can leave the room, turn off your cameras. I call on speakers randomly, and I keep questioning precedents and speaking precedents separately. I'm going to go ahead and put my link for my spreadsheet in the chat. I have a inbuilt precedence just randomly generated, and the speech priority goes one way, the questioning priority is the exact opposite. So it's flipped just to ensure fairness. I follow standard NSDA gathering procedure, but because this is online, I'm going to keep it simple. This green card says 2 minutes. That means you've been 2 minutes into your speech. Yellow 2:30, and red is 2:55. At 3 minutes, I will count you down my fingers until I hit 3:10, where I will have to verbally cut you off. For questioning, I will give you a card at 20 seconds before counting you down from 25 to 30 and then calling on the next questioner. Are there any other questions? Seeing and hearing none, are there any motions on the floor? Senator Jiang,
Motion to open the floor for docket nominations.
are there any seconds? All those in favor? More importantly, any opposed? Okay, now, are there any docket nominations at this time? Senator Sains.
I nominate Agenda A consisting of first, Operation Prosperity Garden, second, student loans, third, the Builder Act.
Okay, for the reference of the room and the judges, that is first legislative item. Sorry. That is going to be first legislative item 1, a bill to eliminate anonymous participation in Operation Prosperity Guardian. Second, I believe that was, do you say Builder Act, Senator? Senator Jiang, do you say Builder Act? Student loans, okay, perfect. That is the second legislative item, a bill to reform student loans in undergrad and grad education. And the third item is the third item on the bill packet, building U.S. infrastructure through limited delays and efficient reviews. Are there any other nominations? Senator Ostheimer.
I move to nominate the Rocket Docket, which consists of Builder, Student Loans, and Operation Prosperity Guardian.
Okay, so that is first Builder, which is the third item on our legislative docket, then Student Loans, which is second, and Operation Prosperity Guardian, which is first. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other motions at this time?
Motion.
Senator Litchfield.
Motion to close the floor for docket nominations.
Are there any seconds? All those in favor, please raise your placards. Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, then we go to a vote. All those who wish to have docket A, consisting of Operation Prosperity Guardian, Student Loans, and Builder Act, please raise your placard at this time. I count 1 Senator Litchfield, 2 Senator Peel, 3 Senator Chauhan, 4 Senator Sains, 5 Senator Olson, and 6 Senator Zhang. All those who wish to affirm docket R for Rocket by Senator Ostheimer, please raise your placards now. That is 1 Senator P. Mercedes, 2 Senator Ostheimer, 3 Senator Dalaby, 4 Senator Jiang, 5 Senator Lee, and 6 Senator Bakai. That does go down to a tie, which I believe then the PO has to break it, or do we call another vote? Parley, do you know if I should just break it?
Call revote.
Call revote. Okay, so everyone who wishes to do docket A, please raise your placards. Okay, I count 1 Senator Zhang, 2 Senator Litchfield, 3 Senator Peel, 4 Senator Chauhan, 5 Senator Sains, and 6 Senator Olson. All those who wish to pass docket R, please raise your placards. I count 1 Senator P. Mercedes, 2 Senator Ostheimer, 3 Senator Dalaby, 4 Senator Jiang, 5 Senator Bakai, and 6 Senator Lee. Again, this is a tie, so we will have to count a revote. Are there any motions?
Motion.
Senator Ostheimer.
I'd like to start a 1-minute recess.
Are there any seconds? More importantly, any opposed? That 1-minute recess does pass.
Okay, very quickly, do we have a sponsor for, I can sponsor Prosperity Guardian, so it's just very convenient. Do we have a sponsor for Builder? Okay, so if we don't have a sponsor for Builder, we can just.
I can
Senator Zhang.
sponsor Builder.
Okay.
I can sponsor Builder. Can we take a
Okay.
split on like a prosperity garden? Because I feel like
Yeah,
it's very
because the
one-sided.
problem is that
Yeah,
just
I
seems
feel like it's gonna be
one-sided.
neg heavy. And even
Okay.
then, the debate isn't gonna be good because of even if
Well, let's
there are
just take a split.
halves.
I disagree. I
Right,
think this
just
is the
like
best
raise your
debate ever.
placard if you have an F on prosperity garden. I count 1, 2, 3. Okay, raise your hand if you have a neg. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like
Yeah,
we should.
That's
Yeah.
Really
The other
Let's just take a
one-sided.
split for the
Is there
Builder
more
Act.
even?
All
Let's just
apps
split for
for
Builder
Builder
Act.
Act, please placard. 1, 2.
For what? I'm sorry.
For Builder Act. Raise
AF,
placard to
AF for
AF.
Builder Act.
That's 3. All negs for Builder Act.
That's great, guys. You know,
That's
1, 2,
same.
3, 4, 5.
Recess
6
time
or
has
5?
elapsed.
I know.
Are there any motions at this time?
Motion.
Motion.
Senator Chauhan,
Motion for an additional 1 minute in-house recess.
are there any seconds? More
Yeah.
importantly, any opposed? That motion does pass.
Okay, why don't we
Let's
just
do-
We can
do
take
student loans first?
Yeah, student loan
Or-
seems pretty good then.
Who has
Okay,
AF for
AF on
student
student
loans?
loans,
Raise
raise
your
your
hand.
Student
placard.
loans first.
AF.
but didn't we
on
already
student loans.
wait,
AF.
time out. Okay, didn't we already like do our nominations? Can we like not change the
Yeah.
docket?
We can
Yeah,
table
I
stuff
mean,
though. We can make
I
it
mean, I
work.
think it's a tie, so I don't really know what to do here.
But I think
No,
like
I think we can reopen docket nominations.
we can reopen.
We can also just table the bill if we need. So
Wait, what do you mean
So
table?
Wait, do we have a
if you go
sponsor
to
for student
docket, we
loans?
can table the first bill, go to the second one immediately, then
So just
untable it and go to the
no
first one.
tabling
Oh, I see.
the door.
Would you
But,
like to? Would you guys like to do docket
I don't wanna do
A,
Operation
do
Prosperity
student,
Guardian.
like table OPG, do student loans, and then go back to OPG, and then maybe do builder after that. Does that make sense?
I
I think
agree.
OPG
I
is
don't-
honestly
will we
better
have enough
debate than
time?
But I mean, like, I feel like
Yeah.
it's hard to find app arguments for OPG. Like, even if someone on the
You will
negative-
not have enough time if
Yeah.
you guys keep
Recess
yapping
time
about
has
stuff.
elapsed. Recess time has elapsed. Are there any motions? Seeing none, we automatically go back to a revote. All those in favor of passing docket A, consisting of OPG, student loans, and builder, please raise your placards. I count 1 Senator Zhang, 2 Senator Litchfield, 3 Senator Peel, 4 Senator Chauhan, 5 Senator Sains, and 6 Senator Alsop. All those in favor of passing docket R, consisting of builder, student loans, and OPG, please raise your placards. I count 1 Senator Lee, 2 Senator Mackay, 3 Senator Jiang, 4 Senator Beamer-Setti, 5 Senator Ostheimer, and 6 Senator Dolly. This again goes down to a tie. Are there any motions on the floor?
I like to change
Point
my
of
vote to
personal
docket
inquiry.
A.
Senator Ostheimer.
Are there any ways to break the tie?
You
Otherwise,
have
I
to, we
like to-
have to go
I-
down to a revote.
It's
I like to
possible.
Okay.
change my vote from docket R to docket A.
Okay, we can reopen the floor for docket nominations.
The vote was
Okay,
just
the vote
changed.
was
We don't need
changed.
to
The vote
change
was
that
just
now.
We're good.
changed. So now it's docket A
Yeah.
with 7 votes and docket R with 5 votes. Seeing a clear majority, docket A is now passed. Barring any further objections, the first bill on this docket comes off, and that is a bill to eliminate anonymous participation in Operation Prosperity Guardian. Are there any
Motion.
sponsors?
motion.
Senator Bakai.
I move to table a bill to eliminate anonymous participation in Operation Prosperity Guardian.
Are there any seconds? All those in favor, please raise your placards. More importantly, are there any opposed? Seeing unanimous consent, this bill is tabled, which means the next item on our legislative docket is student loans. Do we have any sponsors for student loans? Please rise this time. Once again, calling any and all. Senator Jiang.
I thank the chair, that's Senator Zhang, Jiang, speaking for the first time in today's session. I'll take a sign of silence as indication to begin. My parents came to this country because this was the land of opportunity, prosperity, and freedom. But today, you heed the cause of the American people and pass. Principally, you pass today to save our students. Let me explain what's happening in the status quo. Hansen of the Education Data Initiative explains on March 3rd, 2024, that student loan debt in the United States totaled $1.7 trillion, with over 43 million people having federal student loan debt. When we pass this legislation, we alleviate the burden from our scholars and geniuses so that they pursue the American dream and stop them from taking these debts to the grave. Hansen, in a separate article on September 25th, 2023, reports that the average student takes 20 years to pay off their student loan debts, and that some professional graduates take over 45 years to pay out their debts. And that furthermore, 21% of borrowers actually see their total student loan debt increase within the first 5 years of their loan. Representatives, our academics and scholars are suffering from these student loan debts. But how does my legislation solve this issue? By capping future student loans at 150% of principal amounts in Section 1A and capping them currently via Section B, 1B, students and citizens don't get trapped up in a cycle of debts that they stay in and get deeper in for years and decades. Ferguson Jr. of the Council of Foreign Relations reports in October 11th of 2022 that college completion rates are becoming a fundamental problem, standing at around 60% nationally and are even lower for disadvantaged minorities. The nation loses out on a full potential of a well-educated workforce, and the reason why students can't start or finish college in the first place is because of student loan debts. People accumulate debts and never benefit from their education because these students simply never pay off their debts in the status quo. For economical freedom and prosperity pass. By alleviating the burdens of our constituents and inviting prosperity, we directly benefit the economy, our own security, and the qualities of life. The Board of Editors for the Council of Foreign Relations writes on August 22nd, 2023, that higher educated workers provide greater tax revenues, are more productive, are more civically engaged, and less reliant on social and government programs. Representatives, when we pass, people go to college. People get educations and opportunities. And in due course, we decrease poverty, improve lives, and alleviate burdens. Pass.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 1 second. Seeing that was a sponsorship, I now call for 4 questioners. Questioners, please rise. Between Senator Chauhan and Senator Bimarasetti, this first goes to Senator Bimarasetti.
Okay, so Representative, how many students are dropping out because their college loan debt is high?
I don't have the exact number, but people can't finish college because of these loans.
Okay, so today's legislation establishes a cap at 150% higher than what it's already at. How many students are actually getting to that high of a level of debt?
Representative, I'm telling you that students currently are actually seeing their loans increase, and because of that increase, they're stuck in paying those debts for decades.
Okay, so is today's legislation actually going to mitigate that issue?
Yes, because
Senator Chauhan.
these will be capped at the current loan amount.
Hi, Representative. So when we look at trying to repay and put a cap on these loan repayments, what's the actual effect on inflation? Because we've done these loan forgiveness programs in the past, and it's clearly not worked. So how's this legislation?
Representative, this loan forgiveness program is different from what we've done in the past. This legislation is placing a cap on these loans so that one, they don't
but when we
increase,
look
and
at
two,
interest
students
rates and
don't get.
inflation,
I'm
when we
sorry.
look at interest rates and inflation, we see that when interest rates are higher, we lower inflation. But when they dive lower than the inflation rate, inflation rises. Is this current system going to be lower or higher than inflation rates?
I'm telling
There are
you
2
right
more
now that by
question
passing
blocks
this
on the
legislation-
floor. Are there any and all questioners? Please rise. Senator Chauhan, would you like another question block? Senator Chauhan.
Sure. Yes. So continue to answer.
Could you repeat your question one more time?
In today's policy, when we implement it, is this 150% cap going to be lower or higher than the money raised with the current inflation rates?
Even if we implement this 150% cap, inflation will be very minimal, because in the past when we've implemented,
so you can see inflation is going to occur. You can see that inflation is going to happen.
It's going to go up minimally every single time we try to address student loans. That's happened in the past.
Okay,
and that's
so
not
now if I explain to you the impacts, would you see
Senator Ostheimer.
the impact is that we can save lives.
Yes or no, will more people go to college?
I told you yes, because these loans are stopping them.
Okay. Yes or no, will more people have a degree?
People will have degrees when they go to college.
Won't that decrease the value of a degree? Meaning that
No,
they'd have to
Representative, because
pursue
when people get
higher education, taking on more student loan debt?
I'm telling you that when people get degrees and get an education, they can actually get themselves out of poverty, and that benefits their own livelihoods.
Right, but if
think
everyone
education
has a
is bad in
degree,
a
then
way?
it reduces the
Thank
value
you,
of it.
senators. Questioning time has
No, it
elapsed.
doesn't, Representative.
Seeing as there's a speech on the affirmation, I now call for a speech in negation. All speakers, please rise. Once again, calling for a speech in negation. All speakers, please rise. Senator Chauhan.
Hi, this is Senator Chauhan speaking for the first time today, spelled CHAUHAN, for all my representatives and judges. I'll take the next couple moments of silence as an indication of readiness before I begin. Okay. Putting a cap on our student loan repayment is like boxing in a rising tide. It doesn't just hold it back individuals and it stifles the entire economy. It's time to let the economy breathe and expand without putting artificial restraints. Collapse today's policy under one sole cause: inflation and destruction of economy. Let's look at this today and analyze. As Forbes tells us on July 16th, that the average federal student loan is around 40K. And Bankrate emphasizes that currently it takes students around 20 years to actually repay these student loans. And Representative Zhang just stated that for graduates, it might take even more, like 30 or 40 years. And then the interest rates are also really high. When we look to undergraduates who are having to pay a 5.5% interest rate, or for other graduates that have to pay on average 6.72% interest rate, at the end of repaying their loans over a course of 20 years, we see that their loan adds up to $147,000 for an average of 40K of debt. This is a severe issue that today's policy tries to solve, but it doesn't solve that. And to understand this, we have to look at interest rates and how they actually interact with inflation. The Federal Reserve explains that high interest rates maintain low inflation rates, because when there's high interest rates, it lowers spending, which then lowers prices, leading to less inflation. But when we precisely look at today's legislation and how it targets this, we see how imperative it is to fail. We can look at Section 1, subsection A, which puts the cap to around 150%, which is significantly lower, even lower than our current inflation rate, which is provided by CNN Business to be around 3.2%. Now, this is the key reason you fail today, because after we only pass a bill that spikes inflation. When these students repay their loans, they're only up to 150%. Or for other students that don't have to pay their loans anymore, it's going to be less than the inflation rates that are currently put in place in the status quo. This will spike inflation. Now, what are the exact impacts? Well, ironically, this bill prevents education in the future. We can look to Brookings just last February, which reported that inflation spike during COVID rose college costs around 27%, which hasn't been reduced since. And the Federal Reserve has already set goals with us to reach an inflation rate of just a mere 2%. Representative Zhang, how are we going to provide education in the future when you also conceded in my questioning block that inflation will happen? Now, these statistics clearly prove to you that when we pass today, that inflation that you say is minute will become a more severe problem in the future. There is no point in choking the breaths of our scholars in the future just so that once today can breathe, because we're only going to put more of our constituents into poverty as inflation rises and make it harder for our future scholars to afford the very colleges and the very degrees that this nation needs to rise. Therefore, fail today's policy, because not only does it fail to put a cap on these loans to protect our scholars, but it only worsens the situation in the future.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 1 second. I now call on 4 blocks of questioning. Questioners, please rise. Once again, I call on 4 blocks of questioning. Questioners, please rise. Senator Jiang.
Representative, is inflation happening inflation happening right on the status quo?
Yes, but it's been reduced in the last couple of years.
Right. So so I just told you in my speech that when we pass, people can actually go to college because we're minimizing these loans. So how does your point still stand when these people will go to college in the first place when they actually can't?
Okay, so you're putting a cap on the loan forgiveness at 150%. That's lower than the current inflation rate if they were to pay it at the 3.2%. Therefore,
I just
the
told you,
Federal Reserve
Representative,
loses
that
out on
these
money.
people can't go to college, but when we pass, they actually can go into college in the first place. You're saying
Senator
that they can't in
Zhang.
the future, but they can right now.
Good morning, Representative. So has our past student loan debt forgiveness increased inflation?
Yes.
Okay, but then we also see spurs in the job market, right? Because more people now go to college, they're able to get jobs, which increases productivity, which balances out that inflation. So how does
Okay, but
any of your
previous loan
impacts
forgiveness programs have been different than the one in today's policy outline. I tell you in my speech that with this 150% cap, it's significantly lower than the inflation rates because
didn't we
that's going to
literally
cause imbalance in our economy.
forgive debt
There are
like
two more open
entirely?
questioning blocks. Any and all questioners, please raise your placards. Senator Zhang, would you like another block? Once again, last call. Are there any and all questions? Senator Zhang.
Representative, so when we pass this legislation and some debt gets alleviated for our current students paying them, what does that lead to? I told you that when we alleviate these debts,
Okay,
these
so
higher
you're
educated
looking at the
workers,
short-term effects. You're looking at the
sorry?
short-term effects of
they're
saving our
not going to have
scholars, right?
certain effects because these higher educated workers will have more money to put towards the economy, and that gives us more taxes, more productivity, and more civic engagement.
But that's lower than the inflation rate. That's going to spike
That's
prices.
not lower
That's the
inflation
whole
rate,
point,
Representative. There are
Representative.
millions of
After passing
highly
today,
educated workers.
inflation rises, prices rise. Our constituents have to pay more for goods, and
That's
it becomes
incorrect,
harder for them
Representative.
to
I just
enter
told you
college.
that these workers will have more money to put towards the
Question
economy.
time has
That will
elapsed. There's
combat
still
inflation.
one more block of questioning available. Any and all questioners, please rise. Final call. Any and all questioners, please rise. Seeing no questioners, the chair absorbs this final block of questioning. Senator Chauhan, you may be muted. The chair thanks you. Seeing as a speech in the negation, I now call for speech in the affirmation. Any and all speakers, please rise. Senator Lee, you stand unopposed.
I thank the chair. For my judge's reference, Senator Lee, spelled L-I, speaking for the first time in this legislative session. I'm going to take the silence as saying that you're all ready. And once I get my timer set, I will begin. Imagine a young woman, call her Maya, standing at the stage at her college graduation, her gown fluttering in the breeze like a superhero's cape. Maya isn't just donning academic regalia. She's cloaked in a mountain of debt that she's told she needs to scale over in the coming decades. Enter stage left, a proposed bill that aims to be the sidekick to our cap and gown crusaders. That's legislation you need to affirm today. This bill proposes a simple yet impactful measure. It limits the total repayment of federal student loans to no more than 1.5 times the original loan amount. Once borrowers have repaid 150% of the principal, the remainder of their debt is forgiven. This evidently decreases student loans for all, as Senator Zhang has said, but let's zoom in because this legislation actually decreases the racial wealth gap. And Senator Chauhan, this has to do with the inflation you mentioned. According to the Education Data Initiative in 2023, Black and African American college graduates own an average of $25,000 more in student loan debt than white college graduates. The exact reason students of color earn more with this legislation is because they have more debt. Students know exactly how much they will pay the minute they set their debt. And while that number never increases, the value of the dollar decreases. Because students of color have more debt, as time goes on, inflation wears it down, saving them more money than their white counterparts with less debt. As students of color save more and white students save less, the racial wealth gap decreases, and this results in a multitude of economic benefits. Senator Chauhan, you claim that inflation is terrible in this scenario, but clearly we incentivize more people to go to college and decrease the racial wealth gap, which outweighs your impacts. Furthermore, the economic benefits are also very diverse. According to the McKinsey Institute for Black Economic Mobility, highlighted in 2019, closing the racial wealth gap could significantly boost the nation's GDP by as much as 6%, equating up to $4,300 in GDP per capita, a worthy social investment that has, like Senator Zhang said, will help people pay for college and pay for further goods. This quantifiable number outweighs Senator Chauhan's unquantifiable interest rates. What's more important than the charts, however, is the human stories behind these numbers. It's about the African American family in Harlem striving to break the chains of generational poverty through education. It's about the Latino family in the San Joaquin Valley aspiring for a home in a better school district. It's about the journalist who had to resort to selling Bibles to chip away her college debt. This legislation opens the door to these families and countless others, altering the trajectory of these lives burdened by systemic financial inequality. In the end, this legislation won't merely be a graduation present for Maya. It's a gateway to a more equitable future, potentially reducing the physical divide that shadows our society for millions of students. This legislation promises to cap the villainous climb of student debt at 150% of the original loan, effectively planting a flag of victory for those like Maya, who could use a financial superhero around that corner. And that's why you passed today.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 59 seconds. I now call on 2 blocks of questioning. Questioners, please rise. Senator Chauhan, you stand unopposed.
Hi, so I told you in my speech, quantifiably, that our interest rates are currently around 6.72% and the inflation rates are around 3.2%. After passing today, the 150% cap dives that lower than the inflation rates, therefore spiking them. This increases the cost to go to college. So despite incentivization, it becomes harder for our constituents to afford college. How does that increase our economy?
What's your question here?
I asked you, how does this increase our economy?
This increases our economy because more students go to college. When more students go to
the cost
Senator
rises.
Peel.
Hey, logically speaking, right now, don't we have interest rates that are below 150% for at least some Americans?
Rate is below 150%. But that's
Sorry?
I'm sure the monthly interest rate is below 150%. That's what you're asking for.
So, okay, so what's the average in the status quo? Above or below 150?
Are you asking for the monthly interest rate or like yearly?
No, I'm asking for the total cost paid back after interest.
I don't have that
Questioning
number.
time has elapsed. Seeing without a speech in the affirmation, I now call for a speech in the negation. Any and all speakers, please rise. Between Senators Pimer-Setti, Senator Dalaby, and Senator Bakai, this goes to Senator Bakai.
I thank the chair. Hello, everybody. This is Representative Bakai, spelled Baqai for my judges. I'll take silence as an indication of readiness, and I'll begin momentarily. All right, that I'll begin. As members of Congress, it's important to recognize that we always leave something behind. On the beach, we leave footprints in the sand. Upon touching mirrors, we leave fingerprints on the glass. On people, we leave impressions. And on communities, we leave legacies. When contextualizing today's debate, we see that the only thing we leave behind are the very people we intend to aid. The citizens of America, the students who are struggling to get money. Now, Senator Chauhan already told you that when we passed legislation, we increased prices for schooling. I'd like to further his analysis and prove to this chamber that the negation wins today's debate, and with that, you fail. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York found in 2018 that for every dollar increase in subsidized student loans, colleges raised their prices by 60 cents. The prices of tuition are increasing, not just for those who can afford them, but for those who can't afford them either. I'm talking about low-income students who cannot get financial aid. I'm talking about the starving kids on the street hoping to provide for their families. I'm talking about the American lives who are being neglected and silenced. That's not democracy. That's exclusion. But let's take this advocacy a step further and see what happens to the people in the affirmative world who actually do make it to college. According to an observational study composed by Joyce Lee, a professor at Ohio State population, right now, 43.5% of low-income families were racially diverse, with only 17.3% being white. Senator Lee, you can't say we closed the racial wealth gap when minorities can't even access the benefits of this bill. The fact of the matter is, when we pass today's legislation, we disproportionately leave low-income minorities behind, and we limit their access to education. Because when the price increases, the window of opportunity decreases. Here's why that's so important. When there's less racially diverse student body, there's more injustice in our nation. The American Educational Research Journal found in April of 2019 that when comparing students with similar socioeconomic backgrounds, those students at more affluent schools are 68% more likely to enroll at four-year colleges than their peers at high poverty schools. That's the problem, Senator Young. You can't send people to college when you pass today's legislation. You price out the low-income Americans who can't even afford collegiate education. And then you expand that detriment and you put it on those who can. Sure, Senator Lee, we may decrease the amount of people who pay in the short term, but in the long term, Americans have to pay the price for our negligence. You have to recognize the power this Congress holds and use that power to safeguard the Americans' peoples, because people shouldn't have to struggle just to get an education. Today's legislation exacerbates that. At the end of the day, today's legislation looks appealing on the surface, but beyond that surface lies a faulty promise, one that delivers hardships to our constituencies. I ask this Congress to please recognize today's legislation for what it is and fail.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 1 second. I now call on 2 blocks of questioning. Any and all questioners, please rise. Between Senator Sains, Senator Litchfield, Senator Jiang, and Senator Lee, this first goes to Senator Sains.
Why would colleges raise prices?
Because when there's more student loan forgiveness, obviously they don't get as much money because they're forgiving those loans, so they're gonna increase
But we're
prices
not
in order to
forgiving
generate
the
more
loans.
revenue.
We're just changing how they're being paid back. There's no loss of profits. Why would colleges increase the price?
I'm telling you that that's what's happened in the past every single time we've had student loan forgiveness.
Yeah, but we're not forgiving the student loans. We're just changing how
Right,
they're
we're
going to
putting a cap on it, and then under section 3, I believe, we completely forgive all student loans if they've already paid 150% or more.
Okay, that's a very small amount.
Senator
because most
Litchfield.
loans never hit that.
Okay, Senator, simple question. Can you explain to me how student loans work?
Sure. So how student loans work is students take out a loan in order to pay for their education.
Right. Okay. Who are we paying with that loan?
We're probably paying the schools or the banks or however you take the
Right.
loan out from.
So any decrease in profit from the loan, 100% of that loan is going to this school. Any
Right.
profit on top is what the government's making on the back end. How is
Right.
us reducing our
That's what I'm
profit
saying.
affect
Because when we
college
put a
tuition?
cap on it, we subsidize the amount of student loans
Because no
we're
matter
putting a
what the
cap on it.
colleges
We
are
already
Questioning
have
time
raised the
has
prices in
elapsed.
the
Speakers,
past.
please be muted. Seeing without a speech on litigation, I now call for a speech in the affirmation. Any and all speakers, please rise.
Wait, real quick, right before PO, you should be reminding
Okay.
competitors that we are on a Zoom call, so please stop speaking over each other. It's really
Okay.
hard to listen to anybody.
Okay, yeah. And also,
I'm gonna
quick
second
note to the
that.
room. Yeah, quick note to the room too. Please leave your placard up, even if you're not called for the first block. It just makes it easier for me to see who wants to question. Okay, so seeing as that speech on negation,
Also, I'm so sorry to jump again, but please don't message in the chat. If you need to message the PO or a judge or me, actually do so, please. But when someone else is speaking, please don't message the chat.
All right, any and all affirmation speakers, please rise. Senator Sage, you stand unopposed.
Hi, everyone. I'm Senator Sain speaking for the first time today. I'm just going to assume we're all ready. Let me know if you're not. Okay, perfect.
Give me like 10 seconds, actually.
Okay, just let me know.
Okay, we're good. Go ahead.
Okay. In 1958, the US created its first federal student loan program to give all Americans access to education. At first, loans symbolized a newfound opportunity for education. But in the 60 years since, its symbolism has become twisted and tarnished. And now, the only thing that student loans represent is an insurmountable climb for millions of students. Help restore its original meaning and pass. Fundamentally, you pass to help small business owners. Right now, Americans are trapped under a mountain of debt because of student loans. And it doesn't take an economics degree to understand that debt makes it impossible for Americans to start their own businesses. There's two reasons. First, consumer finance explains that student loan debt can destroy Americans' credit because the sky-high interest rates makes it impossible to pay them off. That's why, when Ashley Hardin graduated from the Brooks Institute of Photography in California with more than $150,000 of debt, she was rejected by her bank 5 months over when she tried to qualify for a small business loan. Her story epitomizes would-be entrepreneurs from taking a chance to live the American dream, because Northeastern University finds that a person with even $30,000 in student loan debt is 11% less likely to start a business than someone who graduated debt-free. When we cap payments at 150% of the principal amount, we make it easier to pay off those loans, and we make it easier for Americans to save their credit rating, completely circumventing that barrier. But secondly, when Americans like Ashley can't get loans, they have to pay the startup cost out of pocket. But they can't, because Time magazine on February 27th of 2023 explains that when Americans have debt, they spend almost their entire income on paying off those loans and have nothing left afterwards, making it impossible to get their business off the ground. When we cap these payments, we make it infinitely easier for Americans to start their businesses and to live their American dream. But why are these small businesses so critical? Forbes on May 25th of 2022 quantifies that since 1995, small businesses have created 62% of all jobs in the United States. That's 12.7 million jobs for the low-income Americans that Senator Bakay advocates for. Senator Bakay, you just told us that colleges will raise prices, but you're wrong. There will be no price increase because we're not forgiving loans. We're just restructuring the mechanisms to pay them back. Colleges don't see a decrease in profits because they're still getting full tuition. The only one who loses profits is the federal government, and that's a sacrifice we're willing to make if Americans get an education. Because starting your own business, earning your own income, is the pinnacle of the American dream. And it's all the difference for Americans who have to make one more down payment before they can open their store. Reform student loan debt today, so we don't have to ask our entrepreneurs for their forgiveness tomorrow.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 8 seconds. I now call it 2 blocks of questioning. Questioners, please rise. Between Senator Pimer-Setti, Senator Bakay, Senator Lee, and Senator Chauhan, this first goes to Senator Lee.
Great speak, Senator, but if Senator Chauhan already told you about inflation being so rampant, how could Americans start businesses?
Okay, I'm telling you that the principal reason that Americans can't start businesses right now is because of debt, because they can't get other bank loans because of bad credit, and because they spend their entire income on paying back those loans. Even if there's more inflation, it becomes infinitely easier when they don't have to worry about either of those two burdens.
More inflation, then people can't buy supplies for their new businesses, right? So how would that increase new businesses?
Okay, a small marginal increase in prices doesn't mean
Senator
they can't
Bakay.
buy supplies.
Hey, so who's affected by like this debt, like overall?
Everyone.
Right. So Senator Lee on your own side conceded that minorities are the ones affected because they don't have the income to pay this. Section 2 stipulates that all federal loan borrowers who were paid at least 150% of their initial loan balance will have it set to 0. So technically it's all forgiven. I proved in my speech that essentially what happens is people can't get the education. How does your point still stand that they can't get this education?
Colleges are making the entire profit at the very initial amount. The only one who's losing profit is the government because students pay
Questioning time has elapsed.
Senators
Senators,
federal loans.
Seeing as I have speech in the affirmation, I now call for speech in negation. Any and all speakers, please rise. Senator Peel, you have the floor.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. This is Representative Peel speaking for the first time today. I'm going to take silence from my judges as a sign of readiness.
Give me a few seconds. I'll tell you when I'm ready.
Yeah.
All right, I'm good.
Cool. We've had a lot of talk about poverty in this debate. But what does poverty actually look like? It's not just flies comically fluttering out of your wallet. It means that the red cross of a hospital could become the last thing you see. Because when you can't afford a nice house or a nice medical treatment, the width of your wallet can determine the length of your life. Stop that from becoming reality and fail this legislation. Principally, I urge you to fail because federal student loans usually exceed their 150% cost. I agree to Representative Jang on that, but that's an average, meaning some Americans pay less than that and some pay more. So who receives which impact? Forbes Advisor explains on May 4th of 2022 that there's two key types of federal student loans, direct unsubsidized and direct subsidized, wherein students who qualify for financial aid get more subsidized loans that have interest rates lower than 25% of the students who do not qualify for financial aid. Therefore, they are paying less than 150% of their principal cost over the 40 years it takes to pay back your student loan debt. Therefore, they're not going to receive any benefit by this legislation. In fact, it only gets worse. U.S. News explains on May 30th of 2023 that the only way the Department of Education can lower the cost for those who need financial aid is by having higher costs for those who don't qualify for financial aid. So when you cap the cost at 150, it means the cost for high-income Americans who don't qualify is going to go down. But for low incomes, it's going to go back up so that the Department of Education can keep paying back those colleges. Representative Jang gave us this framework, where the largest goal in this debate is to increase the access to education, not the cost. Therefore, for high-income Americans who are likely to go to college in the first place, whether or not the student loan enacted is above or below 150%, it doesn't materialize in this debate. However, you block out the low-income students who can't afford the college cost of 150% of the principal amount they paid. Therefore, not only do Representative Sain's impacts not materialize about small businesses, but they even get worse. Because when your principal cost of college is now exceeded by 150%, you become less likely to start that small business he tells you about. Representative Lee's impacts don't materialize either. It doesn't increase access to education purely because low-income Americans can't afford that cost above 150%. Why does that matter? Because social mobility is directly tied to social mobility is directly tied to education. When low-income people cannot get jobs because of their education, they can't build up intergenerational wealth. And therefore, like I told you at the beginning of the speech, the width of your wallet determines the length of your life. People die actively because they cannot afford hospital treatments or housing. Don't let that become a reality when you pass. Don't let the wealth divide get worse. Fail this legislation.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 56 seconds. Once again, 2 minutes and 56 seconds. I now call on 2 blocks of questioning. Questioners, please rise. Senator Zhang.
Hey, Senator, so I'm confused. Are higher income Americans more likely to take out a student loan?
Oftentimes they do. Like the vast majority of Americans take out student loans, even if they're higher middle class.
Okay, but who's the ones that need these student loans the most? Lower class Americans, right?
They need them the most, but they're not like taking them out at the highest rate. Everyone's taking them out pretty much equally.
Wait, I'm confused. So you're telling me higher income Americans are taking out student loans and paying, like getting a huge
Like
student loan debt?
the middle classes, yeah. Like the
Senator
middle classes
Litchfield.
paying back a higher interest rate
Okay, why do students take out loans?
to avoid the cost of to like reduce the cost of college.
Right, because if you can't afford to pay for something, you're going to take out a loan to go to that college. If you don't have enough
Exactly.
money to pay for college, do you have enough money to pay off that loan immediately?
You do not.
Right. So by capping the interest rate and capping how much money we can tax in the future, aren't we only decreasing that future burden? Because if you can't afford to pay it now, interest is only going to accumulate, right?
No. Because if they're paying at the 140% rate, right, they're able to pay it back.
Questioning time
That
has
increases.
elapsed. Speakers, please be muted. Seeing as there's a speech on the negation, I now call for a speech in the affirmation. Any and all speakers, please rise. Senator Zhang, you stand unopposed.
This is Senator Zhang, born to early speak, voice to crystal, speaking for the first time in today's legislative session. I'll just begin unless I'm silenced.
Give me 10 seconds.
Yeah, I guess you got silenced. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to give you a few seconds too. All right, I'm good now. But I don't know if Swathi's ready, so just wait for her.
I'm good too. Thank you.
Election day has made me realize why politicians do nothing to improve the quality of public school education. It's because they're terrified of educated voters. I mean, imagine if we had some. Senator Chuan and the rest of the negation wouldn't even be with us today. However, I trust that the politicians in this chamber know what's best for us and our constituents. Pass. But first, this whole debate has the negation seemed like a mess. Senator Bachuri in questioning says that most students don't even reach that 150% cap. But then Senator Chuan and Phil announced that most students go past that rate, and going past that 150% debt is the reason for inflation. Guys, I'm gonna be honest. I thought April Fool's is tomorrow. Why is the negation trying to bring these arguments that are full of jokes? Understand that CNBC announces on August 29, 2022, that without the burden of student loan debt, people seek higher paying careers, stabilize their finances, and what Representative Sain says, they create small businesses. This contributes to the economy, which spurs innovation, spurs job creation, which inherently decreases inflation. This is because more people enter the workforce, more people, like Representative Jiang on my side says, pay their taxes. Senator Bakai is so worried that colleges will raise their prices and that the low income won't be able to afford to get into these colleges in the first place. Understand that if we take this argument at their highest ground, Talk Poverty announces that on May 2nd, 2016, that in the status quo, lower income people can't go into these colleges because they're scared of student loans. They're scared of the debt that comes with taking out a student loan. Senator Lee does a phenomenal job in her speech on accounting for those most vulnerable, minorities, lower income constituents. The US DOE announces in 2016 that 48% of all Black graduates owe more than their white counterparts. When we make that easier, these people are more incentivized to take out a loan in the first place, to get education. This disregards every single negation speaker saying capping student loans will make education harder because now people are more incentivized to get these loans in the first place. That's why you pass this legislation. That's why it's so important to pass. These students are quite literally the backbone of America. They're the ones that drive the economy. They're the ones that spur innovation. They're the reason why every single one of us is sitting in our seats today. Help them pass.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 54 seconds. I now call on 2 blocks of questioning. All questioners, please rise. Between Senator Peel, Senator Ostheimer, and Senator Bakay, this goes to Senator Ostheimer.
More people will take out loans, right?
Yeah.
Colleges will see this, right?
Yeah.
Won't they increase their prices because they know more students will be taking out loans and they can cover an increased cost of college?
Well, I mean, the debt they're receiving past that 15%, 15 years is going to be so much higher than any amount of price that colleges can receive, right? They still want students to be able to take out these loans, which is why they'll still keep it at a reasonable cost.
Senator Peel.
Hey, are low-income Americans having to pay back over 150% of their principal payment right now?
No.
They're not. So how do they receive any of these benefits by capping it at 150%?
Well, I'm saying right now, you're saying their debt is over 150%?
No, I'm saying it's less.
It's less than 150%, right? But isn't
Yeah.
there like also a 10-year cap that makes it like that there's a 10-year cap in this legislation that also
Questioning time has
incentivizes
elapsed. Speakers may be muted. Seeing as that speech on the affirmation, I now call for a speech on the negation. Any and all negation speakers, please rise. Between Senator Dollaby, Senator Ostheimer, and Senator P. Mercetti, this first goes to Senator Dollaby.
I thank the chair. This is Senator Dollaby rising for the first time this legislative session. Just for the reference of the chamber, I will be using my phone as a timer, but the PO's time does take precedence over mine. I can't see the screen at all. So if there's any objections for me to begin, just give me a holler. Okay. As a child, I read Dr. Seuss's words that the more you learn, the more places you'll go. And as a congressman, I realize it's true. Expensive education has mostly allowed the wealthy to go to fantastic places. I'm no Dr. Seuss, but this bill has no rhyme or reason in the way it sets out to fix it. Negate, because this bill hurts those who need the most and helps those that don't. Firstly, let's go through some of the status quo that the sponsor got incorrect and some extra. Representative Jiang overestimates the impacts of the caps. Representative Chahuan touched on this but never gave us the specific numbers. In the status quo, Bankrate on March 14, 2024 tells us college tuitions are capped at 170%. This bill reduces it to 150%. 150% is an absurd number that doesn't help the people all that much at all. Representative Sains also tells you that only the government will suffer. However, never tells you how much. Let me tell you, the Department of Education tells us that their estimate of the cost of student loans was $311 billion off their original estimate, and this number could not have been found until they paid their dues. But if this bill does not do that much to help the people and only cost the government, what is the harm in affirming? Secondly, by passing this bill, we only hurt people who aim to help. This is where the advocacy of the affirmation fails. They claim that this will decrease the price of college and bases all their impacts off there. All the affirmation has said that, but let me go further. Although that seems like an issue that it doesn't harm anyone, the truth is it only hurts people trying to go to university. Representative Zhang, you talk about how your parents came to America for opportunities. So did mine. And with this bill, they won't have that opportunity. Representative Banke already told us that for every dollar of subsidization, tuitions increased by 60 cents. But this was from a long time ago in 2018. How about today? In 2021, the University of Chicago asked their panel of American economic experts if increased government spending to fund loan forgiveness or tuition caps for every socioeconomic group was regressive and that it helped wealthy the most. On the panel, no one disagreed. Nearly 20% went further, strongly agreeing that blanket aid, just like this bill, is regressive and harms the working class. This is because of what Brookings in October of 2020 says, that households in the upper half of the income distribution hold more student debt than those in the lower half. The highest income quartile of households owes about 1/3 of that debt. The lowest income owes about 12%. When we pass this bill, we rip any hope of a comfortable life. Representative Sainz, how are they supposed to open a business if they don't have the education? They can't. So let's make sure everyone
Thank you,
can
Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 10 seconds. I now call on 2 blocks of questioning. Any and all questioners, please rise. Senator Zhang.
Hey, so when I just proved to you that like more people are now willing to take out loans when we reduce this debt, how does any of your impacts on like low income constituents stand? Like,
Okay, so previous negation already told you that they don't take out loans because they're more expensive. What I just proved to you and the former negation is that they only increase prices. So there would be less loans taken out.
Do these colleges want people to take out loans?
Maybe. I don't know. They want
There's
money.
still one open block of questioning. Senator Jiang.
Representative, Section 2A of the legislation basically makes the remaining low balance set to 0 after a student pays 150%, right?
Currently in the status quo, it's 170%, but sure.
Right. So when these students take over decades to pay their debts and they pay over 150%, isn't this legislation alleviating that burden so they don't get stuck in that?
No, because the same thing is true for 170%. This is just making it 150%. People still not going to afford that.
2A is saying that if you have paid at least 150%, that's forgiven.
Question time has elapsed. Senators, please be muted. Seeing as that is a speech on the negation, I now call for a speech in the affirmation. Any and all affirmation speakers, please rise. Once again, I call for any and all affirmation speakers, please rise. Seeing none, the chair highly frowns upon one-sided debate, but the debate must go on. I move to break cycle. Any and all negation speakers, please rise. Senator Ostheimer, you stand unopposed.
I thank the chair for the reference of my judges in chamber. That's Senator Ostheimer speaking for the first time in this legislative session. That's spelled Ostheimer. Give me a sign when you're ready and I'll go ahead and get started.
Give me a second.
Okay.
Quick point of inquiry. Sorry, before you start.
Senator Zhang.
Permission to exit the chamber.
Yes.
I'm good.
Okay. Start on my first word. This Senate has been played, not by China or Russia, not by oil or pharmaceutical companies. We have been played by big education. That sounds absurd, but not a single speaker today has recognized that by incentivizing students to take out larger loans, colleges will raise their tuition to earn more money. To save Senator Lee from being scammed out of a college education, fail. As soon as we saw this bill, we should have asked ourselves, why do colleges charge so much for tuition in the first place? I'll give you a hint. It's not because they need the money to stay afloat. It's not because college is getting better. Colleges are hiking up tuition simply because they can. The College Board reported that private four-year institutions increased tuition by an average of 4% for the 2023 to 2024 school year and 2.5% in public colleges. But a student loan forgiveness policy like this one would exacerbate this. Here's why. Senator Bakai, Litchfield, and Zhang, colleges will raise their tuition because students will be more willing to take larger loans with guaranteed student loan caps. In fact, Bloomberg finds in September 2023 that for every dollar we guarantee in student loans results in a 70-cent increase in tuition. That means we decrease accessibility in the long run. Students won't be able to pay for college because we increase the principal of their loan, ultimately making them pay more. Let's go back to high school and do some math to contextualize what happens in an AF and a neg world. Senator Lee wants to go to a college charging $40,000 in tuition and has to take out exactly what her college is asking for. Let's start in an AF world. Her college increases her tuition to $45,600, and the most she pays is 1.5 times her original principal, meaning the most she pays is $68,400. Next, let's do a neg world. Senator Lee only has to pay off 1.7 times her initial principal, meaning the most she pays is $68,000. That means that the affirmation is actually more expensive than a negation, turning all the accessibility impacts from every single affirmation senator, from Senator Zhang to Senator Zhang, to our side of the House. Senator Zhang, that means that even if more people go to college, we place a bigger burden on them. And Senator Dalaby, I'd like to take your impacts a step further, because this actually hurts low-income constituents. Senators, you were elected here to vote your conscience. Is it in the interest of your constituents to pad the pockets of public and private colleges? Is it right to uplift the wealthy while claiming to champion the poor? My answer is a resounding no.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 2 seconds. I now call on 2 blocks of questioning. Any and all questioners, please rise. Senator Jiang.
Representative, why would colleges increase prices when they know that if they do so, they won't get as much students?
Well, they still get all the higher and middle income students, which means that in the end, they ultimately earn
But
more
they
money.
won't, because if they keep increasing their prices, students won't simply take the loans or go to their college. And that's happening and that's been happening in the recent years.
Well, we still incentivize students to take out these loans because they think
But colleges
that since
won't
we
increase
have
prices.
Senator, they think that they have a student loan cap, which means
Between
they
Senator
pay
Lee,
less
Senator
even though they
Chauhan,
pay
and
more.
Senator Zhang, this goes to Senator Lee.
Great choice, Senator, but like bouncing off the previous questioning block, if colleges aren't going to increase the prices, then what's the impact of your entire case?
Students think that they'll pay less so that they take out loans when in reality they ultimately pay more.
Are you indicating that our students have no common sense?
I'm not indicating that they have no common sense.
This bill clearly states that they'll be paying 150%, which, if you know, is not less.
150% is less than the status quo.
Senators, please be muted. Seeing as the litigation, I now speak on the affirmation. Any and all speakers, please rise. Senator Alston, you stand unopposed.
I thank the chair. My name is Senator Alston, spelled A-L-C-I-N, speaking for the first time in this session. Please give me an indication if you're not ready.
Just give me a few seconds.
Yeah, me too, sorry.
Just to clarify, is this AF?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I'm blowing heavy for y'all, so give me just a few seconds.
Okay, I'm good. Just wait on Chris for a second.
All right, I'm good. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Now, they don't promise equal outcomes, but we're founded on the idea that everyone should have an equal opportunity to succeed. No matter who you are, what you look like, where you come from, you can make it. That's the essential promise of America. Fortify that promise and pass. This debate has boiled down to if capping the student loan actually works. And I argue it does, and it does so in an indirect approach. Senator Chuchan first starts the negation advocacy by saying this legislation has a negative long-term effect due to inflation. But that's actually not true because this legislation actually acts as motivation to pay their education more effectively than students are doing so right now. And that's because of the repayment window of 10 years under this legislation. The Federal Reserve Bank in New York tells us the median loan borrower in repayment takes 20 years to pay off their debt entirely. And those in the bottom, 25%, take over 30 years to pay their loans. By setting a repayment window of 10 years, where the repayment is 125%, or 15 years, where the repayment window is 150%, this bill creates a stronger incentive for borrowers to repay their loans in a timely manner compared to the current median of 20 plus years. Senator Chuchan and Bakwai both try to champion the negative effects of the long term. But all that doesn't matter because this legislation indirectly incentivizes students to pay off their loans faster. But don't take my word for it, because this already happened before. A 2017 study in Australia under a similar system under this legislation found that their loan system resulted in an 80% of borrowers repaying their full debt. This legislation is a sustainability itself. We've already seen it work in Australia and New Zealand. These students make up 39% of our population, but 100% of our future. So it's time to actually invest in them and pass. But next, this indirect impact I just explained actually addresses the negation's worries about low-income individuals and minorities, because this legislation opens up more education access for them. Let me explain. This legislation caps and limits the total number of debt that needs to be repaid, making student loans a less financial burden. By capping the loan repayment burdens and providing more predictable costs, as this bill aims to do, it directly addresses one of the major financial barriers we face right now. Senator Ostheimer and the entire negation advocated for minorities. And I just told you how the affirmation helps them. There's no option but to pass. The fundamental promise of America lies in guaranteeing equal outcomes for all, but ensuring equal opportunities for everyone. This legislation renews the fundamental promise of America. Pass.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 57 seconds. I now call on 2 blocks of questioning. All questioners, please rise. Senator Dallaby.
Okay, so how much does college cost in Australia?
I'm sure you can tell me.
No, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
So universities in Australia and their local colleges they differ, but universities are a little less than the ones in America because America.
They're a lot less, aren't they?
It's not a lot less. America is just more prestigious because of the high universities, but in the median, like state universities.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that it is a different system. Yes or
Senator,
no?
I'm saying the state universities cost the same in Australia.
I'm just confused. How
Senator
does this stand
Bakai.
up against our studies?
Oh. Hey, so why do people take out loans in the first place?
They do it because they need help on paying $2,000 debt.
So how can they just pay off their loan faster? Like, how does it work that way?
Because it's an incentive to make them, because of the cap we're doing, it's incentive to make them, because it's a 10-year window. Because right now the window is 20 to 30 years, but having a 10-year window and making the cost less.
So Senator Peel already told you that the status quo is better than what today's legislation provides.
No,
Questioning time has elapsed.
elapsed.
Questioning time has elapsed. Could you also try not to speak over each other, because this is a call. Seeing as that was a speech on the affirmation, I now call for speech on the negation. Any and all speakers, please rise. Senator P. Mercedes, you stand unopposed.
I thank the chair. This is Representative B. Mercedes. As always, I'm at the leisure of my PO and my judges, so I'll just take silence as an indication, like for your readiness. One sec.
And I'm sorry, what side is this on again?
9.
Okay.
In my home state of Illinois, teachers have had to threaten striking 188 times from 2010. This is because in our government, there's been a lack of respect and funding for teachers and education. And that brings us to today, with a legislation that aims to solve all these issues. However, the reality is today's legislation hurts education quality and our lower income. So every single representative on the app has told you that this cap is going to get rid of student debt. And every single representative has had some confusion as to whether the average student is paying higher and lower than the current cap. Let me tell you this. Brookings tells us that student loan debt is on average as much as this cap, 50% higher than the initial price. If the average student is under as much burden as the app tells you, today's legislation doesn't change anything. We still see all the suffering that the app tells you about, and we don't see any of the benefits. Representative Jiang also tells you that only 60% of students actually stay in college, meaning that 40% of students drop out. The people who are incentivized to go to college under this piece of legislation are the most likely to drop out. As per Section 1A, when we decrease the cap, we trick students into thinking loans under this piece of legislation are actually a better option. However, Representative Dalaby tells us that today's legislation loses money for the government. In fact, we lose $311 billion from this. That means that we have to make up for that price. And the Center for American Progress says that student loans come from taxes, and raising taxes hurts the financial security of our lower income families across the United States. Every single representative on the app has talked about education and its accessibility for our lower income. But understand that if lower income people have taxes raised on them, they will lose their capacity to actually pay off these loans and pay for education, meaning that no argument on the app that talks about education accessibility stands. Representatives Zhang and Elson also tell you that today's legislation increases access and quality of education. However, that's not the case, because by increasing the amount of students who go to college and then drop out, we increase burnout for college professors. Research.com in 2024 tells that 35% of college professors are already burnt out. And Intech Open in 2023 tells that teacher burnout hurts students because it decreases their efficiency and hurts student grades. That means that by passing today's legislation, increasing the amount of students that are going to college and then dropping out immediately, we hurt the quality of education for everyone in the process. Now, this doesn't only hurt education in the short term, it hurts education in the long term as well. Because when students are underprepared for future courses, they lack a basic understanding. And National Institute of Health tells that when students lack a basic understanding and prior knowledge, they perform worse in later courses or just use rote memorization to pass. What we see is a generation of students that fails their classes, or even worse, just memorizes all the facts, knowing none of the applications. We see doctors that are inept and unable to do their jobs, and we see students who don't get financial security in the future because they are unable to perform. Representatives, our teachers made us here. Let's actually protect them and fail this legislation.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 9 seconds. I now call in 2 blocks of questioning. Questioners, please rise. Between all of those standing, this first goes to Senator Olson.
Hey, Senator. So I told you this legislation doesn't actually change the status quo drastically. It just makes students pay the loan faster, which is a better thing for the economy. So why not pass?
Yeah, okay. So basically, even when student loans have been repaid, as mentioned by Representative Dalaby, the government loses a lot of money. And the way
So
the
that's only
government
because it's being paid in a 20 to 30-year window. This legislation says it's going to be a 10-year window, so that doesn't even happen.
Even when student loans were repaid, we still lost a lot of money, and the only
Yeah,
way
and I'm telling you that's in a 20 to 30
Senator
year.
Senator Sains.
Yes or no? When colleges have more students, they make more funding, or they make more money from tuition.
Yeah.
Okay. When colleges have more money, don't they have more resources to invest into providing more for the professors or even hiring more professors?
Okay, so here's the thing. Because these students are more likely to drop out, they're going to go to college for a short amount of time and they'll drop out immediately, meaning that they won't get as much funding to handle the new influx of students coming in.
Okay, but they're still paying for that tuition up front. That's how people pay for college.
They
So
pay
these
for
colleges
1
still
year of
make that
college.
resource.
Questioning time has elapsed. Speakers, please be muted. Seeing as that was a speech on the negation, I now call for a speech in the affirmation. Any and all speakers, please rise. Once again, or Senator Litchfield, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to waste your time. You can read my name.
Give me 1 second.
No. Waste my time. Please spell it for me.
Okay. Litchfield. Just because I love you, Sam. Chris, you're good?
Almost. Sorry.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, I'm good now.
Perfect. 3 centuries ago, we promised a land with foundations rooted in justice and opportunity. Today, we've come to a similar crossroads. As students grapple with the reality of their futures, it is the responsibility of this Congress to legislate with an equally realistic paradigm. Take this realism, pass this policy. So far in today's debate, the AF has argued for helping students, while negation tells you prices get higher. This entire round could use some weighing. I'd like to dedicate the rest of my speech to doing so. Senator Bakai and Chawan, we aren't taking money away from colleges or lowering tuition at all. The only thing that is changing is our government makes a little less profit. In fact, this is empirically the case. When the Federal Student Aid Agency wrote in 2022 that public student loans go to colleges first, any extra interest is disprofit. Colleges have no incentive to raise tuition because their bottom line is not hurt at all. Like my Riz, it doesn't work. I mean, just ask the judge panel. Senator Peel, Bakai, and Dalaba, even at your best, a marginal increase in tuition and a minor hit to the economy does not matter when students finally have the ability to go to school without being condemned to years of economic hardship. Today, Americans are forced to face a gut-wrenching choice between a paycheck and a student loan. You change that. Everyone has just gazed at the price tag. Let's take a look at the students. The sole reason you pass is to protect their mental health. Right now, stress from student loans is terrorizing the future of students, gatekeeping economic mobility for only the most wealthy. When Scholarship for America quantifies that 85% of low-income students say borrowers have difficulty in delaying their ability to buy a house, leaving them in the same economic spot they were when they started college. But it's not just that. Faced with hopelessness and abject poverty, it leads students down the darkest road. When the National Library of Medicine wrote in 2022 that suboptimal quality of life, symptoms of burnout, depression, emotional exhaustion, and increasing cynicism were commonly associated with the students or residents' increasing educational debt. But why does this all matter? To put things simply, you save lives. I want to put into perspective of just how dangerous this debt is. A March of 2021 mental health survey from Melanie Lockhart finds that almost 1 in 14 people with college debt had extreme suicidal thoughts. Over 2,300 people wanted to take their own lives because of what this Congress is failing to do. It's downright deplorable that this Congress has let such a tragedy occur for more than a decade. Senator Peel cares so much about saving lives. You save lives the moment you pass. Don't make a mistake by tearing this bill away again. We stand on the brink of the greatest opportunity of our generation. I'm not asking you to affirm as Congresspeople anymore. I'm asking you to affirm as a human being. Do it for those who can't afford to go to school, and do it for those who have nothing left but to take a loan out, hoping it's not too much. At the end of the day, this Congress should fight for every single constituent, not just the rich. Pass this legislation.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 1 second. I now call on 2 blocks of questioning. All questioners, please rise. Between all of those standing, this first goes to Senator Dalby.
Okay, so we need to we need to help the poor, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so doesn't this help the rich more than the poor and also increase tuitions, which just doesn't help the poor at all?
I told you that colleges have no incentive to increase tuitions, but even at your highest ground, like even if the rich have to pay less, it's still better for everybody to pay less than for everyone to pay more.
But it increases the prices, does it not?
Okay, it won't, because colleges are still getting their bottom line fulfilled no matter what happens.
Senator Ostheimer.
You say that colleges have no incentive to increase their tuition, but won't students be more willing to take larger loans with guaranteed student loan caps?
Okay, I disagree because if you take a larger loan, you're still paying more. See, a $20,000 loan with a unlimited cap and a $60,000 loan for 1.5 cap is still objectively more of the bigger loan, right? So students aren't going to want to pay more money.
Right, but I mathed it out for you, and I've proven to you that the affirmation world is more expensive than the negation world.
Okay, it's not, because colleges have absolutely zero incentive to raise it
Speaking
because they're
to
getting
question
paid
time
no
has
matter what.
elapsed. Senator speaking muted. Thank you. Seeing as everyone has spoken on this bill, are there any motions at this time? Senator
Motion.
Bakai.
I move to previous questioning.
Are there any seconds? All those in favor? More importantly, are there any opposed? Seeing unanimous consent, this bill automatically moves to previous question. I ask that you raise your placard and then put it down when I call on your name. All those who wish to pass this legislation, a bill to reform student loans in undergrad and graduate education, please raise your placards. I count 1 Senator Jiang, 2 Senator Lee, 3 Senator Chauhan, 4 Senator Litchfield, 5 Senator Zhang, 6 Senator Sains, and 7 Senator Olson.
Oh, sorry, was that the pass, Mother?
That's the pass, yeah.
You can remove my vote.
Okay, so then that was 6 votes. And then all those who wish to fail, please raise your placards. I count 1 Senator P. Mercedes, 2 Senator Dallaby, 3 Senator Ostheimer, 4 Senator Mackay, 5 Senator Chauhan, and 6 Senator Peel. Are there any abstentions? There should be none. In a vote of 6-6, the PO automatically breaks the tie. I will vote to pass. So in a vote of 7-6, this bill does reach our 1/2 + 1 majority. My congratulations to the sponsor, Senator Jiang. Are there any motions? Senator Ostheimer.
I move to a 5-minute recess.
Are there any seconds? More importantly, are there any opposed? That motion does pass. 5-minute recess is started.
We're going to the OPG bill next, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
By the
Alright,
way,
very
should
cool.
we just do both bills because the split on both of them is kind of iffy?
I
And
think
if
we'll
we
probably
don't,
get to both bills just
How
because
about
we want everybody
let's
to
take
get
a little
Yeah.
break and then come back.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Quick note to the room, there's about 40 seconds left in the recess. So whenever you guys are back, you can just turn on your camera. That'd be helpful.
Hey y'all, are we planning to debate 2 items or just or 3?
Let's do Prosperity Guardian and then see what happens after. If other people need to speak, we're down. If they don't, they don't. We'll see about time.
Yeah,
I was
in the
thinking
chat
of like just not breaking cycle for Operation Prosperity Guardian, and when we have to, just move to the next bill so we can keep the debate flowing nicely.
That's cool. So we're doing a
Yeah,
base two?
sounds good.
Yeah, base two
Yeah,
though.
I
'cause,
think
yeah.
I think we should do base 2, yeah. What was
Okay,
the split
bet.
on OPG again?
It's like 3-8, I think.
It's
Yeah.
the same.
Questioning
split
time
for
has the
all of them.
recess time has the lapse, my bad. Seeing as we just finished our second item, this automatically goes to the third item. So unless there are any objections, Representative Mackay.
I moved to untable bill of Operation Prosperity Guardian.
All right, any seconds? All those in favor? More importantly, are there any opposed? Seeing none opposed, this bill is gets untabled. So I now call for any sponsors on OPG. Senator Litchfield, you stand unopposed.
All right, 2 times in a row. That's Litchfield, Litchfield. Let me know when you're ready. Or don't let me know. You're good.
Yeah, give me 5 seconds.
Yeah, give me like 10.
Yeah, I'm gonna need some too. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, I'm good.
Perfect. In 1979, the US-backed monarchy in Iran was overthrown by an Islamic rebellion. Since then, Iranian military expansion has turned backyards into battlefields and homes into rubble. It is necessary now more than ever that this Congress takes the first step to achieve our objective of international peace. It starts with this bill. The sole sigma as to why you pass is to slow the expansion of the proxy war in the Middle East. Right now, Iran is expanding their influence rapidly, funding attacks on US allies and interests. AP wrote on January 22nd of 2024 that Iran directly funded the Houthi attacks on NATO merchant ships in a direct attempt to gain all control over Red Sea trading routes. These attacks aren't some random, one-off actions. It's the first domino in a long line of aggression to come. In other words, the Ruby Mar was the first, but it won't be the last. And if we don't do something soon, Iranian proxies will keep attacking Americans. When the New York Times wrote on January 14th of 2024 that the whole purpose of Iranian proxies is to find a way to punch at the United States without facing consequences. I don't know about you, but to me, this sounds like the perfect recipe for a military conflict. And if we don't take action now, it may forever be too late. Don't let the price of power come at the highest cost. This is about the protection of those who cannot protect themselves. This legislation delivers a desperately needed action to slow the expansion of the proxy war. Section 1 declassifies all members of Operation Prosperity Guardian. This is important because we finally create the correlation needed to hurt all Iranian influence. When the Council on Foreign Relations wrote in 2022 that an organized coalition against Iran and affiliated proxies would decrease their regional power by more than 57%. The entire negation is going to tell you about Iranian retaliation, but they cannot retaliate because they are already retaliating today. When Reuters wrote on October 10th that in an attempt to show geopolitical strength, Iran has enriched records amount of uranium, sent hundreds of millions of dollars to terrorist proxies, and greatly expanded their navy. But why is this so important? To put things simply, you save lives. I want to put into perspective of just how dangerous these attacks are. Al Jazeera wrote on February 25th of this year that since November 19th, the Houthis have launched at least 57 attacks on commercial and military ships using multiple methods like Iranian-funded drones and missiles. And for every single one of these attacks, Americans are put in harm's way. When Al Jazeera reported again on February 21st that after the vessels were seized, they were rerouted to Yemen, where crew members are still held captive to this day. The sanctity of a human life should never be lost in the mess of geopolitics. I want this Congress to remember one thing. Inaction is the deadliest action. Americans are stuck in Yemen and being constantly terrorized just doing their jobs. You passed this bill to draw the line and finally quell the conflict in the Middle East.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 53 seconds. I now call on 4 blocks of questioning. Any and all questioners, please rise. Between those standing, this first goes to Senator Pimersetti.
Okay, so Representative, why are countries anonymous in Operation Prosperity Garden right now?
Right, because they're afraid of Iranian retaliation.
Okay, so won't they just back out if we pass this legislation?
I disagree because showing Americans and multiple organizations together will disagree with that narrative that Iran's going to retaliate because they're already being aggressive today.
Okay, so doesn't that mean that they're more likely to retaliate if they're already being aggressive?
What countries in the Middle East want more than Iranian retaliation, or what they fear more? What they want is a coalition against Iran. Stop Iran in the long term, these retaliations stop happening.
Senator Olson.
Hey, Senator. So how does it protect against retaliation when these countries already said they are anonymous because of that reason?
Okay, so as I explained to you in my speech, the number one way to decrease Iranian proxies' power and their influence is by creating a coalition. How you stop Iran in the long term is you take away their influence in the Middle East.
So what does exactly making them not unanimous even do? So you could still have all the support, but just stay
so right
anonymous.
now, how Operation Prosperity Guardian looks is a couple countries against Iran. You create a coalition of multiple, it looks a lot different.
Why won't Iranians just retaliate more?
Because a coalition of 20 countries, you can't really just attack 20 countries, right?
But Houthi rebels are already attacking trade ships, even though there's like a bunch of enemies there.
I'm glad you brought that up because the reason why the Houthis don't care about Operation Prosperity Guardian because it looks like a short-term issue. So when I assume President Trump comes into office, if he gets elected, he's just going to take away the issue, right? So now we establish it as a huge organization. It looks like a much bigger coalition, a much more long-term threat. So they actually have to listen.
Senator Peel.
Hey, if we redefine OPG under a non-anonymous network, doesn't that mean we have to spend the next month reorganizing our military force?
Sure.
Yeah, so doesn't that give the Houthis opportunity to regain their trade network within the Red Sea?
I actually disagree here because we have a much larger access to multiple military parts, right? So through Operation Prosperity Guardian, we get to use our allies like military bases, airports, whatever. You expand out to multiple more countries, we get access with a coalition against the Yemen and Iran, right?
Sure.
Questioning time has elapsed.
Thank you.
Senators, you may be muted. Seeing as a speech on the affirmation, I now call for the first negation speech. All speakers, please rise. Between those standing, this first goes to Senator Sainz.
Hi, everyone. I'm Senator Sainz speaking for the second time today. I'll assume everyone's ready. Let me know if you're not. Okay, perfect. I'll go ahead and get started. Saudi Arabia's flag has a white sword in the middle to represent the strength of the nation. Unfortunately, that strength is falling into the wrong hands, and for decades, the Houthi rebels have been terrorizing the Saudi Arabian people. This legislation condemns the country to a lifetime of violence and chaos, and that's why you fail. There's two scenarios with this policy. A, our allies in the Red Sea either keep publicly performing exercises, or B, they pull out. And Senator Litchfield, just like your Riz, your policy doesn't work either, because both scenarios are terrifying. First, you failed because if our allies stay in the region, we destroy the possibility of peace between Saudi Arabia and the rebels. Section 3A lets us continue our joint exercises publicly, but that's extremely problematic because Reuters on January 12th of this year tells us that for the past few months, Saudi Arabia and the Houthi rebels have been engaging in peace talks and are closer than ever before to resolving the conflict. This policy destroys that possibility because the Boston Global Forum on December 26th of 2023 tells us that in Operation Prosperity Guardian, the US isn't alone. It's likely that 10 other countries, like Egypt and Saudi Arabia, are anonymously performing military exercises in the Red Sea. When the Houthi rebels have been waging an ideological war against Western influence in the Middle East. Exposing joint military exercises with the US means the Houthi rebels are likely to intensify their attacks. But secondly, you failed because of the other possibility. If our allies pull out, we lose our military foothold in the Red Sea. Section 3B says that countries can end their participation, and that possibility is just as dangerous. Because remember, it's not just the US in these areas. We're working with 10 other countries to maximize military power in the Red Sea. And our allies in the region are at a balance between not wanting to ruin their political reputation and aiding the US against Iran. This plays to our advantage because we have a huge military backing in the region and work to prevent the Iranian-backed Houthis. If our allies pull out, we lose military power and the Houthis have less opposition and power to prevent attacks. And in either scenario, we give away our leverage and influence straight to the Houthi rebels. These impacts are terrifying because we give power to a group notorious for attacking civilian populations. When AP News confirms that the Houthi rebels launched an explosive at an innocent family of 9 just 12 days ago, we need to take every step ensuring that never happens again. Senator Litchfield, your policy does the opposite. We both agree that preventing the Houthi rebels is the biggest impact in this debate. But every affirmation speaker after me has the burden of proving how in both scenarios, we still prevent the Houthi threat. And when they can't, they lose this debate. Protect the strength of the Saudi Arabian people and negate this legislation.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 7 seconds. I now call on 4 blocks of questioning. All questioners, please rise. Senator Litchfield.
Okay, simple enough question. Why are the Houthis maintaining attacks while Operation Prosperity Guardian is anonymous?
Because right now they're still wanting to attack Western influence in the region, specifically the US. But when we make these attacks public, they intensify the threats. It's not like just are they attacking or not. They can attack so much more.
Okay, I agree. They're attacking because it's a short-term idea, right? They don't really think Operation Prosperity Guardian is going to last because it's only been around for like 3 months, right? So you establish it as a long-term organization with no anonymous members. How does that change that perspective?
Okay,
There's still 3 open blocks of questioning. All questions, please rise. Senator Bakai.
Hey, so what is Operation Prosperity Guardian?
Okay, Operation Prosperity Guardian is a joint military coalition in the with the Red Sea with the US and 10 other neighboring
Right.
countries.
So if we remove this anonymity from these certain countries, how will the Houthis get worse under this bill if they're gonna attack an entire coalition?
Okay, because the thing is that right now, the Houthis aren't attacking as much as they could. When you make this completely public, especially with Saudi Arabia, their biggest enemy in the region,
In
that
the
makes
short term, though,
other
right?
conflict. What?
Senator Sang.
Hey, so whose prosperity are we actually guarding in Operation Prosperity Guardian?
The Saudi Arabian and the Yemeni people.
Not really. We're guarding like the navigation for these ships, right?
We're guarding multiple things.
Yeah, okay. So if these ships don't know who's guarding them, how does Operation Prosperity Guardian even help with the Red Sea navigation area?
Okay, what I'm telling you is that when you pass, this region becomes so much more dangerous and embroiled in conflict.
Senator
Trade routes are
Litchfield.
more unstable with the passing.
Okay, how is Operation Prosperity Guardian perceived today?
Okay, right now it's perceived as the US leading exercises. When you pass and other countries are publicly involved or they pull out, both scenarios are equally dangerous.
Okay, so other nations in the Middle East only perceive OPG as the US and England versus the Houthis, right? You take away the anonymity of all the members, including Middle East, Africa, everybody around, that perspective changes. Therefore, we can get more people behind us because it's not only the US bullying another Middle Eastern
But
country.
Iran doesn't care.
Questioning time has elapsed. Senators, please be muted. Seeing as there's a speech on the negation, I now call for a speech in the affirmation. Any and all speakers, please rise. Senator Zhang, you stand unopposed.
This is Representative Zhang speaking for the second time in today's legislative session.
Real quick, sorry to interrupt. PO, where's your, or did you like create a spreadsheet or anything, or are you just kind of?
Oh yeah, I have a spreadsheet. I can send the link again.
Yeah, could you share it, please?
I'll
Yep,
just
it's in the
take
chat.
silence as I'll just take silence as an indication to begin. And sometimes you can hear the screams of anguish across the Red Sea. The screams of the Yemeni civilians as they struggle to gain resources because of the blockade imposed on them by the Houthis. Their bloody tears pigmenting the seas as famine and death continue to proliferate under Houthi rule. You know that situation is bad when not even human rights groups want to establish human rights in the area. Has to help those people. Now, the negation doesn't seem to actually know whose prosperity we're guarding in Operation Prosperity Guardian. Representative Litchfield tells you this, though. It's navigation within the Red Sea. Understand that in Section 2, it refers to Operation Prosperity Guardian as an initiative to establish security and safety within the Middle East region, with half of its 20 members being anonymous. However, anonymity introduces room for uncertainty. Understand that even though this Congress and the US Navy know who these anonymous figures are, these ships we're aiming to protect don't have that information. That's why it's classified. We've seen instances where this is troublesome. Sal Marciolano from G Captain, a site specializing in naval activities, announces directly 3 months ago that major shipping companies have already reported the lack of information and action within the coalition. These ships don't know how to travel, when to travel, or who's defending them. That's a huge issue, especially when the Houthis are prioritizing their targets to ships linked to humanitarian aid. The US Central Command announces just 1 month ago that Iranian-backed Houthi terrorists fired 2 anti-ship ballistic missiles at MV Sea Champion, a ship that has delivered humanitarian aid to Yemen 11 times in the past 5 years. When we pass, we don't pass just for navigation. We also pass for protection. But second, here are the impacts that my side has currently missed in this debate. The Brookings Institute finds on January 16, 2024, that basic services in Yemen have collapsed, leaving 21.6 million people in need of humanitarian assistance. A quarter of the population has no income because economic activity in the region has crumbled. Giving these ships a safe path to help those civilians in the future means removing anonymity to increase cooperation between those groups within the region. Senator Lee and Sainz is so scared about Houthis attacking more, but they won't because of an increase in cooperation increases the coalition's strength as a whole. They cry because they have no other choice. They cry because the anonymous nations want an easy way out if this coalition fails. They cry a sea of blood. Stop their suffering. Pass.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 6 seconds. I now call on 2 blocks of questioning. Questioners, please rise. Between those standing, this first goes to Senator Sainz.
Okay. Is the US the strongest military in the world right now?
Yes.
Okay. If the Houthi rebels aren't scared, if they're not scared off by that and they're already attacking us, what's a couple more countries going to do? Why is that any different?
Wait, so you're saying they're not scared of the US, but they're going to be not scared of 20 other nations that are
Okay. The US is
defending
already
against them?
significantly stronger. If they're already attacking us, why wouldn't they attack the coalition anyways?
Okay, I'm sure 20
Senator
other
Dallaby.
nations.
Okay, so what is Prosperity Guardian? It's a task
an
force,
operation,
right?
a coalition.
It's a task force,
sure.
right? Okay, so what flag does a task force fly under? A US task force fly under? the US flag.
The US
So
flag?
how would shipping
yeah.
companies not know where they are?
Okay, it's like just like normal people don't know who the members of Operation
Question
Prosperity
time has elapsed.
Guardian is.
Speakers please be muted. Seeing without a speech on the affirmation, I now call for speech and negation. Speakers please rise. Between all of those standing, this goes to Senator Chauhan.
Thank you. This is Representative Challen. Still spelled the same. There's no identity theft committed in the past 10 minutes. I'll take the next couple seconds of silence as an indication of readiness, and I'll begin. True power isn't always in the spotlight. Sometimes the greatest impact comes from the shadows. When you choose anonymity, you're not just avoiding attention, you're preventing unnecessary tensions, allowing your actions to speak louder than any potential conflict ever could. Today, we failed this policy on the sole grounds that anonymity is key to reducing tensions while allowing impacts to actually materialize. First, let's actually see why this operation started in the first place. We see the Pentagon in December of 2023 that states that the OPG was constructed to protect maritime trade to Israel due to the attacks by the Yemen Houthis. And for this coalition, there's 20 total countries, 10 which have been anonymous. Now, Representative Litchfield and Representative Zhang state that making them not anonymous will increase cooperation and help fight against Iraqi tensions. But that simply just isn't true for two key reasons. One, we're still getting the tangible aid that these 10 anonymous countries are providing to this coalition. And two, as stated by a previous representative in questioning, that they're already willing to fight against the US, one of the biggest militaries, showing off that there's other countries already in this coalition won't do anything. But let me tell you how it actually worsens the area. We can look at precisely in today's policy in Section 3, which it allows countries to either leave or stay on not anonymous. But this reason for anonymity is key. We can look to the New Arab on January 16th, which dives into why many Arab countries, except Bahrain, haven't even joined the coalition because they're rumored to be the ones that are currently in it. It's because of the US's unconditional support for Israel. Now, these seems quite contradictory with many impacts, but the Arab countries are facing. We can look to the Suez Canal, which is key to Egypt, currently under Yemen attacks, which has lost 40% of their revenue. We can look at Saudi Arabia and the UAE, which doesn't join despite their military coalitions fighting Yemen since 2015. Countries like these don't want to join because they don't want to show that they're protecting Israel trade. They still want to show support towards Gaza. But when we keep anonymity in this operation, we maintain those tensions to stay calm rather than creating more conflict. But now let's look at the true importance it brings. The war zone explains that right before New Year's, the anonymity helped to aid the US-led coalition to fight Houthis and help Israel. But at the same time, it protects the image that these Arab countries bring to the Israel-Gaza war. Now, the quantitative impacts are clear. Al Jazeera states in January that with the conflict, ships have rerouted, increasing shipping times by 2 weeks and increasing global costs of freight by 10 to 15%. But that's just economics. Let's look to the lives that are being put on the line. When we lose allies and we lose these 10 countries that are helping us fight Yemen Houthis, not only do we make it more easy for Yemen Houthis to take control of these freight ships, we also lose more lives as they continue to rampage on this transportation. Instead of handing over Houthis the Red Sea and lose our allies, it is key to maintain anonymity. It doesn't matter if you keep your ballot anonymous or not, because the only logical answer is to fail.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 5 seconds. I now call on 2 blocks of questioning. All questioners, please rise. Senator Litchfield.
Okay, simple question. If a country is anonymous, what incentive do they have to actually contribute towards RPS?
Well, then, for example, I stated in my speech, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Saudi Arabia and UAE have already been fighting the Yemen Houthis since 2015 with their military coalition. Egypt needs the Suez Canal, which is under Houthi attacks, for their revenue that they earn.
Okay, so if we declassify OPS, it actually gives the member states an actual incentive to contribute and
Well, they don't want
provide
to be
goods for
publicly
help,
shown
right?
because they're trying to support Gaza. They don't want to paint their image in the way that they're supporting Israel. There's a
They
reason
can
they're
join
staying
RPS
anonymous.
Senator
without supporting
Jiang.
Gaza,
Senator
right?
Jiang.
What's the net harm of passing legislation?
Okay, so I stated in my speech, when we pass this legislation, it incentivizes countries like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE to potentially leave this Operation Prosperity Guardian because they
So
don't
even
want
if
to
they
tarnish
leave,
their
why
image.
does that matter? Because the U.S. has one of the strongest militaries in the world.
Okay, but why are we losing allies, period?
Representative, it doesn't matter because sure they can leave, but
No,
then
but why are
we
we
still
wanting
maintain
to?
our we still
Why
maintain
are
our
we willing
operation.
to give up allies? If we're getting more help, why are we denying it? Plus, they're in the
Questioning
region.
time
These are
has
the most
elapsed.
countries are already in the
Senators,
status quo.
please avoid speaking over each other. Senators, please be
English.
muted. Sure, thanks to you. Seeing as there's a speech on the negation, I now call for a speech in the affirmation. Any and all speakers, please rise. Once again, any and all speakers, please rise. Seeing none, the chair highly frowns upon one-sided debate, but debate must go on. Any and all negation speakers, please rise. Between Senator Lee and Senator Peel, this goes to Senator Lee.
I thank the chair for the reference of my judges, Senator Lee, spelled L-I, speaking for the second time in this legislative session. Assuming all
personal privilege.
Yes, state that.
Text the chamber.
Yes, granted.
Anyways, assuming all my judges are ready, then I will begin once I get my timer set up.
Wait, this is an egg, right?
Yeah. In the great ocean of global politics, anonymity is the sea anchor nations often use to navigate turbulent waters. Each nation has its reason, and each situation has its own case of tollways and rocking boats. This situation is no different. Each country in Operation Prosperity Guardian has its own set of issues, but the affirmation seems to forget that and demand the anchor be lifted. Negate. The top issue in this debate so far is whether or not countries will pull out or stay in. The entire affirmation advocacy has been based on the assumption that countries will stay in, but they have yet to prove that will happen. On the other hand, the negation has been saying yet and yet again that countries will pull out. And let me add to that case. The bill mandates transparency, stripping away the protective veil of 20 nations allied against Houthi aggression. Realtor reports that 8 of these prefer quiet anonymity, not out of shame or deceit or out of Houthi retaliation, as Senator Litchfield said, but out of national interest and security. The Boston Global Forum provides insight into the reticence of these nations, linking their anonymity to the trepidation of domestic backlash. We're not merely revealing their names, we're exposing them to a gale of domestic and international pressures due to the political factors of this legislation and others in Operation Prosperity Guardian, to which they might not stand resilient. This means that we aren't inspiring these countries to greater deeds, but instead we push them to retreat. Contrary to the claims of the affirmation, the passage of this legislation will see our coalition not strengthened, but shattered, as countries withdraw to avoid the squalls of public scrutiny and political turmoil at home. Moreover, this bill's singular focus on disclosure ignores the complex realities of global diplomacy. It disregards the delicate negotiations and quiet assurances that are the bedrock of international cooperation and the base of Operation Prosperity Guardian. The assumption that transparency will lead to increased participation is a dangerous simplification. Not all nations can afford the luxury of openness without consequence, like the US is currently enjoying right now. When these countries retreat, we end up having less resources, increasing even more prices, and killing the very people Senator Zhang advocates for. All of the affirmation's impacts automatically turn to the negation because we worsen the situation with less resources and less supporters. In conclusion, while the sea of global politics may be turbulent, it's essential to navigate these waters with wisdom and foresight. By insisting on transparency like the affirmation is doing without understanding the underlying currents, this bill capsizes the very ship it's trying to sail by shattering our coalition instead of strengthening it. Let us find a course instead that allows our allies to sail with us with confidence, whether they fly their flags for all to see or prefer the strategic discretion of anonymity. And that's why I urge you to fail today.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 45 seconds. I now call on 2 blocks of questioning. All questioners, please rise. Senator Jiang.
Representative, this route that we're defending accounts for 15% of the world's trade, right?
Yes.
But so why would countries pull out when they're protecting their own trade and international trade?
Because countries have to face domestic backlash.
But they're protecting their own trade, so if they don't protect their own trade, won't they also face domestic backlash?
I don't think, okay, first off, Operation Prosperity Guardian isn't actually working that well right now because, as you can probably tell, trade in the Red Sea and near the Suez Canal actually hasn't advanced further. And second of all,
Senator Zhang.
Hey, so why isn't Operation Prosperity Guardian working that well right now?
Well, prices are still high because ships are still not able to properly pass through the Suez Canal.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the reason, as I stated in my speech. It's because these nations are anonymous. So when these nations become unanonymous,
Pull out, meaning we'll have less support on our side.
okay, but it's like we don't even have support in the first place when we don't even know who half these nations are. Like it works in both worlds.
Part of Operation
Questioning
Prosperity.
time has elapsed. Senators, sorry, seeing as that was a speech on the negation, I now call for a speech in the affirmation. Speakers, please rise. Once again, speakers, please rise. Senator Bakai,
I motion for a 1-minute recess.
are there any seconds? All in favor, please raise your placards. More importantly, any opposed? Seeing none, 1-minute recess starts now.
Hey guys, so I know we had like a lot of negs. Do you guys want to table this bill and go back to it just so people can flip? Because I'm trying to working like on like a late app right now, but it's just like not ready. And because we have a lot of negs, I think it'd be more efficient if like some of the negs, kind of flipped, just so we can have like more balanced debate. If you guys are okay with that.
Dude, just real quick.
I was thinking-
Athena, what time do we have until? 4? Try and end a little bit before.
So like 55 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's very unlikely you'll be able to circle back to this bill and actually continue a substantive debate on it. I think either choose A, table this bill, leave it off the table, just go hard on the next debate, or take a 5-minute recess here, a 3-minute recess here, and get that AF ready. Especially since you're online, I think it's a lot easier to write quickly. That'd be my recommendation to do that second thing. I don't think we should move on to another bill.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would also just say that, just as a note, in the NSCA manual, there is no rule about like the maximum amount of speeches that you can give per like on the same side consecutively. We frown upon that obviously, but you can all
That is true. If you give the fourth F in a row, I will not like it. I'll tell you that for sure.
Yeah, and also, I think we need a little bit of time to be able to actually look at what the argumentation is, because if we move on to another item, I promise you, all those other people that just spoke, you're probably gonna look just a little stronger because you're prepped, and it just doesn't make you guys look good. I would recommend just take the recess, take some time, and those who are able to flip will have the advantage here.
Recess time has elapsed. Are there any motions?
Motion.
Senator Bakai,
Motion to extend the recess by another 3 minutes.
are there any seconds? All those in favor? More importantly, any opposed? Seeing none, 3-minute recess starts now.
Wait, so Bakai, how long is it going to take you to flip?
I think maybe like 5-10 minutes, like Judge Berlin said. I think
I
that'd
just
be
wanted to
fine.
ask, how many speakers
My
do we
recommendation
have?
would be to just
so
everyone who doesn't have a speech start prepping now and use this recess as prep time.
I say we just
Is
like do this bill. I don't think we go on to Builder. I think if you want to give a second speech, I say we take a recess. You all can like do debate on this
Yeah,
bill.
just start working right now. Yeah.
we have 7 people who, if we're doing base 2, there's 7 people who haven't given 2 speeches yet. I'd say just
Okay, so-
like decide based on that.
You can take a 5 to 10 minute recess. You guys choose.
We do need more than one person to flip to AF though, because
Yeah.
one AF and then 4 negs isn't ideal either.
Yeah.
I would
yeah,
raise
okay.
your hand, like raise a placard if you haven't given a speech. Okay. All you guys neg?
I can
any
flip
of
to
you guys
AF.
switch?
Flip to
You can
AF.
flip
Yeah, I can flip
Okay.
to AF.
So we got 2 people to
Okay.
flip. Okay, I think that's a balance. We have 3
Would-
AFs and like
isn't it-
4 negs.
Yeah, Representative Young, is it fine if you need like a 5-minute recess or 10-minute?
I would say take
Senators
the
Young,
time
you're
that you
muted.
have right now.
5-ish. 5-ish.
Take
is
your
fine.
split.
Okay.
Take
You
your
guys have
splits right
about
now.
2 minutes left in the recess currently.
Yeah.
Take your splits right now and then extend it by like maybe 5, and then we move on.
I think
Yeah,
it
we
should
don't
be
want to be
fine.
sitting in recess for very long. We want debate.
For sure, yeah. Okay, so should we just extend the recess by another 5 minutes, just so we can all get debate on this bill?
I mean,
Everyone okay
let's
with
just wait to see what they get, and then maybe they may need less. So.
Okay, all right.
Also, for the judges in Parley, my computer might just start pausing randomly. So is it okay if I like keep my camera down until like question periods or so?
Sorry, repeat that.
My computer, if like just randomly will either like start like lagging or blank screen on while I'm on the recording. So is it okay if I like stop my video every now and then like so I could speak up during questioning without my computer dying?
Yeah, do whatever you need. It's okay.
There's about 10 seconds left in the recess. So we're gonna get started soon. Recess time has elapsed. Are there any motions at this time? Senator Lee,
Motion to extend recess for another 5 minutes.
are there any seconds? All those in favor, please raise your placards. More importantly, any opposed? Seeing none, 5-minute recess starts now. All right, recess time has elapsed. Are all the judges and Parley back? Just like any sign of life. I know it's been a while.
I'm good.
We here.
All right, I think that's everyone then. Senator Sains and Senator Chauhan, if you're here, I'm gonna zoom Senator Chauhan, you're here. You said your camera will be off, but I'm gonna start to get going. So we end on speech on negation. I now call for a speech on the affirmation. Any speakers, please rise. Senator Bakai, or between Senator Dalaby and Senator Bakai, this goes to Senator Bakai.
Thank the chair. Hello, everybody. This is Senator Bakai, spelled Baqai, speaking for likely the last time. I'm going to be giving a late and extremely unexpected speech. So just bear that in mind. And I'll begin momentarily.
Wait, sorry, what side was this on?
The AF.
Okay, cool, thank you.
All right. Then I'll begin. OPG. Operation Prosperity Guardian. Each word within that sentence has a meaning, and I'm going to spend my next 3 minutes structuring my speech along these 3 principles: Operation, Prosperity, Guardian. And with that, I implore you all to pass. First, let's start with Operation. The OPG is an operation, one where we establish a coalition of multiple nations. Senator Sains, you say Houthis will get worse under this bill. I'm sorry, but what? I contend that if we pass, they literally can't get worse. The Houthis aren't just going to attack an entire coalition. Your argument falls flat, just like Senator Litchfield's Riz. Senator Chauhan, I refuse to believe that having an anonymous structure is better in any way. When we pass, there are 2 worlds. One where these countries leave because they don't want to expose their presence, and one where they stay strong and they remain known. Senator Lee, this is the link you wanted. The affirmation wins on both fronts. Firstly, countries just won't leave, and they don't need to. And when they stay, we have a strong coalition to help combat terror. There are literally no negatives to this policy. Secondly, let's move into prosperity. According to the Department of Defense in December of 2023, between 10 and 15% of global shipping follows through the Red Sea, and these attacks are impacting global trade and commerce, which negatively impacts the economies of nations all around the world and within the OPG. That's an incentive because it costs commercial shipping firms billions of dollars. That's a negative, and I concede. Operation Prosperity Guardian aims to address this and focuses on security in the Red Sea, but hasn't generated results. Here's the thing. Senator Zhang already proved that when we remove the anonymous tag on these nations, we foster peace. I would like to second that sentiment because when we pass, we allow for greater transparency and we allow for greater accountability. The Guardian writes in December of 2023 that when there is more accountability in the Red Sea, prosperity thrives as nations are able to collaborate and actually have discourse instead of just fighting in terror throughout the Red Sea. Prosperity shines because of the OPG, and when we remove the anonymous tag, there's more prosperity for all nations involved. Prosperity shines because we combat the piracy of the Red Sea, and therefore everybody wins. Finally, Guardian. Today's legislation is a guardian angel sponsored by Senator Litchfield. It paves the way for the success of us all. And while Senator Litchfield's Riz is bad, this bill is good. You pass because we guard the structure, the peace, the stability of the Red Sea, and all those involved. At the end of the day, you don't pass today's legislation to protect the people in this room. You pass to protect the people who put you here. You pass to protect the people who we as a Congress have been sworn to serve.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 5 seconds. I now call on 2 blocks of questioning. Any questions, please rise. Between those standing, this first goes to Senator Alston.
Hey, Senator. So if you think the countries thought it was in their best interest not to be unanimous, wouldn't they do so already?
I mean, I guess today's legislation just provides an incentive.
So there's obviously a net harm. So there's obviously a net harm because the strongest terrorist group is going to
No,
go.
I completely disagree with the premise of the question. If people
So if
want
they're
to be
attacking under,
let me
they're
finish.
attacking
I'm
the
saying that when
strongest terrorist
people,
group.
the reason they're anonymous right now is because that's how the OPG was founded. It was only 3 months ago. In the long term, as Dr. Litchfield proved, it provides
Senator, some
prosperity for
countries
all the
aren't
nations involved.
Senator Chauhan. Senator Chauhan.
Hi, Senator. So, again, bouncing off the same line of questioning, what are the net harms of maintaining anonymity?
First of all, you can't like collaborate. I proved that in my speech because the Department of Defense.
Okay, but like the
2023
past like
said that
6
there's
negation speakers
global
have
trade.
told you that this cooperation is still going to happen because they all do it under the coalition of the U.S. and under the U.S. flag.
Senator
So
Lee on your
cooperation is
own
still being
side.
maintained.
Okay, can I answer your question? Senator Lee on your own side conceded that there's 2 fronts. One where the countries leave and they don't need to. The affirmation wins on both fronts because there's no need. There's no net negative from passing.
Questioning time has lapsed. Please, speakers, again, try not to cut each other off. Seeing as a speech on the affirmation, I now call for a speech in negation. Any and all speakers, please rise. This goes to Senator Peel.
Hey everyone, this is Senator Peel speaking a little later than intended, but it is what it is. Once again, for my judges, that is Peel, P-I-E-H-L. I'm going to take silence as a sign of readiness. Very cool. We've had a lot of people in this debate tell us about the purpose of OPG, but I'd like to define it under 2 statements. Avoiding fear, because it's that fear when food shipments in Libya don't come in that a family is scared of going hungry. It's fear in companies when you don't know if your cargo ship will be bombed or even sunk. It's fear that flows through the Red Sea, not water. But because today's legislation causes people to cower in terror, I urge you to fail. The debate thus far has been centered about whether or not countries will leave Operation Prosperity Guardian. My side has already told you that them leaving is bad, which is why I'll spend my remaining minutes showing you why countries staying or even joining would make the conflict worse. Because one thing this debate needs to understand is that the Houthis are already on the downfall. The Counter-Extremism Project tells us in March of 2024 that the Houthis are unable to create a domestic weapon supply due to global sanctions causing the seizure of $1 billion of assets. Therefore, their weapon supplies are reliant on Iran. That's where Operation Prosperity Guardian has been so important, because Breaking Defense tells us in March 22nd of 2024 that because OPG has all the area around the Red Sea fortified by US ships, Iran has to back off from supplying them weapons, and Iranian drones and missiles haven't been able to reach the Houthis. Therefore, the next few months are the most imperative in this debate. Whether or not the Houthis can survive as a terrorist organization is determined by whether or not they can get weapons for the next few months. If they can't, the Houthis can't survive as a terrorist group. If they can, then they embolden themselves. Therefore, the winner of this debate isn't who increases long-term presence like Representative Litchfield tells you, but who stops Houthi and Iranian trade for the next 2 months to prevent a revitalization of the Houthis. Representative Litchfield, I agree entirely. Inaction is the deadliest action, but because today's legislation puts us out of power, when power is a prerequisite to prosperity, that I'm afraid the most deadly action is this legislation, because it makes it so the military has to reorganize under an anonymous network. Both Representative Litchfield and Zhang conceded this in questioning. But that means for the next 2 months, our military is inactive. Because more countries will join or even stay the exact same, they have to reorganize under a united force. The Middle East Institute tells us in February of 2024 that when Operation Prosperity Guardian removes its anonymity, it means they have to reorganize under a joint military force, not an individual one. Representative Bakai, Zhang, and Litchfield all tell you that increases cooperation. But if it means we're out of power for the next 2 months, it means the Houthis get revitalization from trade with Iran. Representative Chauhan is right. Fear grows in the shadows. But when you give the darkness time to develop, we have a reason to fear. Because the trading economist tells us in February of 2024 that because of inaction from OPG, prices have gone up in Egypt for food by 78%. 6%, because companies don't want to risk trading in the Red Sea regardless of Houthi action, because they're still more scared that the Houthis are going to attack their ships. FDR once said that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. But because I'm terrified of today's
Thank you,
legislation,
Senator, for that speech of 3
fail.
minutes and 10 seconds. I now call on 2 blocks of questionings. Any and all questioners, please rise. Senator Litchfield.
Why is Iran able to expand so easily?
Because if you block out OPG for the next 2 months, then they revitalize their trade networks.
No, Iran's able to expand so easily because we've literally done nothing about it. You create a public coalition
OPG
against
did
Iran.
something.
What does that do to them?
Wait, Iran has been trading with the Houthis in silence. They haven't publicly admitted to
Okay,
their
this
trade.
isn't like a war of
Thus, when
guns, it's a war of
OPG's
optics, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was a war of optics against Iran, having a bunch of countries, including the Middle East, Africa, and multiple allies, be against Iran. How does that
Senator
change their view
Mackay.
optically?
I'm confused. Why would the OPG completely diminish the US's power for like the next 2 months or whatever you say?
Because we have to reorganize under a joint military force. Representative Litchfield tells you that in questioning, and every affirmative speaker has told you we increase cooperation.
Right. So Senator Litchfield also told you that the reason Iran is like doing this stuff is because we haven't like involved. Doesn't today's legislation actually allow for us to be involved by removing anonymity?
No, because if we remove ourselves for a singular month, it allows the Iranians to reinstate themselves in power, and
That's
therefore the
because we
Houthis are
haven't done anything,
revitalized.
right? Because we
Questioning
haven't
time
done
has
today's legislation
elapsed.
doesn't give a good
Questioning
time.
time has elapsed. Members may be muted. Seeing as that speech on negation, I now call for a speech in the affirmation. Any and all speakers, please rise. This goes to Senator Jiang unopposed.
I thank the chair, the Senator Zhang, speaking for the second time in today's session, and hope and probably last. We'll take a sign of silence as indication to begin. Today's debates has been jumping from Iran, trade, and Saudi Arabia to the Houthi rebels in Israel, but let me devote my entire speech to one crucial factor. That's trade, and why our allies, when they stay, will actually double down. Let's talk about the status quo and why OPG was created in the first place. It was to protect ships and trade so we can maintain trade to our international partners. Representatives, our countries abroad also have stakes in protecting this vital trade route. Our own Department of Defense on January 12 of 2024 reports that OPG actually brought together forces from 22 nations in order to ensure freedom of navigation. But why is this important? This is important because OPG isn't just us, and it brings together nations under a common goal of protecting their own trade and international trade abroad. Representative Lee states that countries stay anonymous because of domestic backlash, and Representative Chuhan brings up Israel, but either way, you get domestic backlash because we risk global trade and we risk international trade for the entire road, potentially causing a recession. Countries, nations, and representatives won't simply risk that. Representatives, let me explain what Representative Lee and the rest of the negation simply don't understand. But first, let's say that countries do retreat and that they do pull out of this operation. But representatives, instead, we won't lose power, and we will instead maintain our alliance in the region. Even if countries pull out, that simply won't matter because other countries also have a stake in this vital trade route, and instead will double down on behalf of their trade and on behalf of our alliances. Bono and McHugh of the Associated Press writes on January 12, 2024, that the Red Sea is a busy waterway with ships traversing the Suez Canal in Egypt to bring goods between Asia and Europe and beyond. In fact, 40% of the Asia-Europe trade normally goes through this exact area, including a huge amount of oil and diesel fuel for import-dependent Europe. Representatives, our allies in Europe are dependent on this route. Even if they leave, our allies in Europe will stay and double down in our defense. Representatives Lee and Chuhan, our other allies will step up to take this place because they simply depend on this route too. Representative Peel says that we'll be out of action for a few months, but Representative Lee on his side also told us that our current operations are ineffective in the status quo. By passing, reorganize our forces under a joint force to be even more effective. representatives, for the sake of protecting this vital trade route, strengthening our alliances, in unity, we pass. By protecting trade, maintaining alliances, we increase our global standing and maintain our alliances abroad. Pass.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 10 seconds. I now call on 2 blocks of questioning. All questioners, please rise. Senator Pimer-Setti.
Okay, so what happens when other nations that aren't like European leave the operation?
Even if they leave the operation, we won't see a drastic shift because our European allies will step up.
Okay, but do our European allies have the same information that these other nations do?
What information are you talking about? I'm telling you that they'll step
Okay,
up
so these
in
other
order to help
nations
us
are
protect
located
us.
in the Middle East, right? So they're pretty close to the Yemen and the Houthis. So wouldn't they have more information than our
We
European
have
allies?
information. We also have information because we have bases near that area, and we're also in that
Senator
area.
Lee. Senator Lee.
Great speech, Senator, but wouldn't losing more allies be bad since we currently have anonymous allies that are contributing?
I'm telling you right now, even if we quote lose their allies and they pull out, that actually won't matter because our other allies will step up in order to protect this vital trade route.
But if we lose those allies, then it's a net harm, right? Because our other the other European allies you're talking about currently aren't in the coalition. So if we lose the anonymous allies we have right now, wouldn't that be a net harm?
It's not a net harm because our other allies will step up, so we actually won't see any harm. And second, we're gonna reorganize our forces, making us even more effective. That's a net benefit.
Questioning time has elapsed. Senators, you may be muted. Seeing with a speech on the affirmation, I now call for speech negation. Any and all speakers, please rise. This goes to Senator Dallaby.
I thank the chair. I'm finding a hard time finding the unmute button. I'm not gonna waste my time spelling my name. It's on Zoom. It has been a long session. So if you're not ready, just give me a holler. Of course, I'm at the leisure of all those above me. Okay. Far too often in Congress, we focus on how initiatives have worked in the past, never how you can make them work in the future. It's early to tell if if this initiative is working yet or not. So all we can do is set Prosperity Guardian to be as successful as possible. That being said, this debate has come down to one main thing. Which side provides the closest thing to peace in the Middle East? The major question in this debate that shapes the debate is if anonymity is needed or not. Anonymity is required, as without it, it leads to the all-out failure of Prosperity Guardian. Eliminating the secrecy out of Prosperity Guardian is taking away the security of countries neighboring Yemen, letting Houthi rebels know which countries to target next, meaning countries will pull out of the program altogether, leading to the initiative to fail. Representative Sainz touched on this, but let me go further. Take the example of Saudi Arabia, for example, a country not listed in Prosperity Guardian. Bloomberg reports on March 25, 2024, that Houthis warned Saudi Arabia of retaliations if they back US attacks. Representative Litchfield, you may say that they can't, but less than a week ago, they said that they will. And even with the possibility of retaliation, it's a reason to negate. Representative Litchfield, let me ask you, Representative Litchfield asks me how this happens. Let's take Egypt as another example, a country reliant on trade going through in the Suez. If the Houthis decided to retaliate against Egypt, Al Jazeera tells us on February 22nd, 2024, Houthis have missiles and drone capabilities of up to 2,500 kilometers. That's more than enough to reach Cairo from Yemen. It's enough to reach Saudi Arabia. When we force nations to paint targets on their back, we push them out of our program because the risk of drones and rockets attacks killing innocent people outweigh the benefits the US presents with Prosperity Guardian, leading to the risk of nations pulling out, leaving the initiative to dry out in the sun. Representative Litchfield, you set the burden that the side that wins today's debate is the side that ensures peace. Passing this bill gives Houthi forces a reason to destabilize the Middle East even more. Less peace, more death. Negate. But then there's one more question. When will countries get out? The answer is yes. We already proved this, as even internal conflict says that from a Washington Institute poll, December 2023, 96% agree with the proposal that Arab countries should immediately break all diplomatic and political and economic conflicts in support of Israel. So to prevent conflicts, Arab nations will pull out. But what's the issue with that? The Pentagon says that there is a lack of intelligence in the region. This fails everything. So, negate.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 10 seconds. I now call on 2 blocks of questioning. All questioners, please rise. This first goes to Senator John.
Representative, so even with the lack of intelligence and seeing that these Arab countries still pull out, can they still provide us intelligence without being part of the operation?
No, because that will be being part of the operation. So like you can't
The
just
part,
do
being
that.
part of the
It's
operation
still
is by
it's hold on, let me finish my answer. It's still supporting Israel and supporting the initiative, which leads to the same internal conflicts that I was talking about.
but can't they still just provide us intel and not be part of the operation by sending military or ships to protect these
No.
ships in the first place?
No.
So they
No.
can't provide intelligence without being part of the operation.
Senator Litchfield.
Can you give me an actual definition for retaliation?
Sure. Sending rockets.
Okay, Iran's not gonna go
Attacking
bomb Saudi.
infrastructure.
Iran's not gonna go bomb Saudi Arabia and bomb multiple countries part of OPS because they know that's an act of war that is going to end their nation, right? Does Iran want direct war with the US?
Huh? Well, what I'm saying in that, I'm kind of confused by your question, but what I'll say is that by supporting it, it makes it possible for Houthis to attack that nation, which is the reason that nation would pull
That's
out.
not at all what's gonna happen.
And
Questioning
Saudi
time
already
has elapsed.
been in
Speakers, please be
conflict with
muted.
Houthis.
Questioning time has elapsed. Seeing as a speech on the negation, I now call for a speech in the affirmation. Any and all speakers, please rise. Senator P. Marasetti, you stand unopposed.
I thank the chair. This is Representative B. Rossetti. I'll just take silence as an indication of readiness, and yeah.
Give me a moment.
Okay.
All right, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. For Representative Litchfield, that's his Riz. And for this piece of legislation, it's anonymous nations. Pass today's legislation because by removing anonymity, we increase accountability in the United States and decrease friendly fire. So first, how many anonymous nations are in OPG? Well, the Republic World in 2023 tells that there are 19 anonymous nations a part of OPG. By passing today's legislation and removing anonymity from this program, we ensure that there are more countries ready to hold the United States accountable. In fact, anonymity has been causing so much friendly fire, as Breaking Defense in 2024 tells that the confusion that anonymity has caused has led to numerous counts of friendly fire. And the DoD this year tells that 2 soldiers died in OPG and they were deemed missing earlier. Now, there's many other missing soldiers. It's simply that our government hasn't accounted for those. That means that OPG is causing the death of American people. By passing today's legislation and removing the anonymity from this program, we can ensure that more countries are available and decrease the confusion in the Red Sea, thereby decreasing the amount of American lives lost. Representative Sins, Shahan, and Lee worry about other countries dropping, but understand that if these countries do drop, then it decreases the confusion even more and saves more American lives. Additionally, the Voice of America in 2024 said that the United States had an airstrike on Yemen's land. Representative Peel worries that if we pass today's legislation and remove anonymity, we decrease the United States offensive regards. However, that same source tells us that the United States is the one holding OPG back. In fact, Egypt themselves tells us that they want the United States to play a larger role in Operation Prosperity Garden so that the Yemenis Houthis can stop attacking these ships that are so vital to their economy. But furthermore, what does this mean? What does this mean for? Oh yeah, Representative Dalabi tells us that by passing today's legislation, we put every nation at risk because of the Houthis' ability to airstrike. However, Business Insider less than a day ago tells that the United States and French ships have numerous military capabilities and are able to shoot down drones and missile strikes that come from the Houthis. Even if they do plan on attacking these other nations, the United States has the capabilities to defend against them. And it provides even more incentive for these nations to actually stay in, because we already know Egypt and Saudi Arabia are basically unofficially in OPG. By allowing them to join completely, we ensure that the United States actually has the capabilities to defend them. Because if Houthi rebels already know about this, then it doesn't really help that they're anonymous. By making that relationship official, we ensure that the United States can actually help defend them, meaning that we actually save lives, Representative Dalaby. Pass today's legislation and protect both American lives and lives across the world.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 3 seconds. I now call on 2 blocks of questionings. All questioners, please rise. Among those standing, this first goes to Senator Ostheimer.
Senator, do we have military and resources in the Middle East?
Yeah.
But do we have enough to really know what's going on?
We have a bunch of bases, so yeah, I'd say so.
No, we don't. We lack quite a lot of intelligence in that region. If Arab countries who were anonymously participating decided to leave, wouldn't that mean we'd lose significant intelligence in the region?
Representative, we already have a bunch of bases in the Red Sea. We don't lose that intelligence because we have it.
No, we don't have the
Senator
intelligence.
Peel.
We
Senator
moved
Peel.
all.
Hey, I agree with your logic. This bill would make OPG more powerful over time. But if it puts the US out of action for the next 2 months, doesn't it give the Houthis time to reorganize?
No, because as I told you, the United States is the one holding back the offensive. The United States is the one telling OPG to be more
Yeah,
defensive.
but every country would have to pull back if we organize under a joint force, right?
No, every other country wants to go all in. So if we organize under a joint force, whatever the most
Yeah, but if they
countries
redefine the military force, that means we're gonna have to reorganize it, right?
Questioning time has elapsed. Speakers, please be muted. Sorry, seeing as a speech on the affirmation, I now call for a speech on negation. All speakers, please rise. This first goes to Senator Ostomer.
I thank the chair for the reference of my judges in chamber. That's Senator Ostheimer, spelled Ostheimer, speaking for the second time in this legislative session. Please give me a sign when you're ready, and I'll go ahead and get started.
Just give me a couple seconds.
Okay.
What side is this again?
This is negation.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Start on my first word. The biggest question I've had in this round is how to pronounce anonymity. Anonymity. The next biggest question I've had is, will countries continue in the OPG if they can't participate on an anonymous basis? I only have the answer to one of those questions, because passing will lead to Arab countries leaving, cutting off our intelligence in the region. That's why today you fail. Senator Litchfield, just like your Riz, this legislation will make people want to leave. Arab countries will leave because it's not politically, ideologically, and practically convenient for them to stay. We already know that through Section 1, we eliminate anonymous participation, and the new Arab writes in January 2024 that the main reason why Arab countries don't participate or participate on a transparent basis is because of domestic public opinion. Citizens are uncomfortable with siding with the United States because of our unconditional support for Israel. If they did openly side with the United States, it would cause so much political unrest in their countries that they'd have to eventually leave. By forcing Arab countries to say whether or not they were a part of the OPG, they will choose to leave or remain as non-participants because it would lead to significant political unrest if they joined. Yet Senator Bakai and Senator Zhang seem to be stuck in My Little Pony because they think that friendship is magic. But countries don't care about collaboration and friendship as much as they do politics and ideology. But by losing current and potential members, we decrease our intelligence in the region. Let me continue off where Senator Dalaby left off and on how we lose intelligence in the region. We lack intelligence in the region and the status quo because we're not present at all except through OPG. Politico reports in January 2024 that since we pulled all of our military and resources from the region because of the Ukraine war, we have limited intelligence in the region. Senator Bima Rossetti, that's why we have limited intelligence. Our only access at all to the region is through Arab countries and OPG. But we can't carry out OPG without intelligence in the region, turning the effectiveness impacts from the affirmation to our side of the House. Senator Bima Rossetti can't play a role if we don't know how. Anonymity. Anonymity. I don't think I'm ever going to get that right, but I will get my decision to fail right. Today, you get it right with me and fail.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 41 seconds. Again, that's 2 minutes and 41 seconds. I now call on 2 blocks of questioning. Questioners, please rise. This first goes to Senator Fakai.
Hey, so Senator Bemis already proved that just yesterday the U.S. stated that they had a role and they had resources. Why should I believe your word over his?
Well, because I told you that in January, we didn't have resources in the region because we moved all of it, or at least a majority of it, to Ukraine because of what was happening there.
That was in January, right? When we were the Russia-Ukraine war was prominent, right?
You can't move resources from Asia
He
to
provided a more right, but he provided a more recent source, and we've
Senator
already had
Lee.
past precedents.
Bouncing off the previous questioning block, if the resources are not in fact in if the resources are in fact in the region, then how do your arguments still stand?
They're not. We can't move resources that quickly.
But is 2 months not enough to move resources?
I would say it takes a long time to move resources to different places, especially when it's from completely different parts of the world.
Wait, then how did they move the resources from Saudi Arabia or the Middle Eastern region to Ukraine?
Well,
Questioning time
because
has
we
elapsed.
had time to do
Speakers,
so.
please be muted. Seeing as a speech on the negation, I now call a speech on the affirmation. Speakers, please rise. Once again, speakers, please rise. Seeing none, the chair highly frowns upon one side of the debate, but the debate must go on. Any and all speakers in the negation, please rise. Once again, any and all. Senator Alston, you stand unopposed.
Thank the chair. That's Senator Alston, spelled ALCIN, speaking for the second time this session. If everyone's ready, just go ahead and start. As a country, America often portrays ourselves as the best country in the world. But what we fail to be best at is actually addressing our failures. It's for America to be the best at foreign relations. We need to be the best for the people. And this legislation sadly fails to do so. So first, this chamber has complicated today's debate. So let's go back to square one. Senator Litchfield, the author of this legislation, tells us that we need to pass to actually win the battle against Iran. And everyone's response has been that it exposes our partners to retaliation. And everyone's response on the affirmation has been that wouldn't even happen. But even if we take them on their highest ground and say Iran doesn't retaliate, their own people will. Because staying anonymous protects countries from citizen backlash. Senator Lee touches on this, but doesn't actually articulate on the physical reality. Allow me to do so. In several participating nations, there are powerful factions deeply opposed to cooperation with the US or working towards Western-aligned goals. So by passing this legislation, we provoke violent groups that are in our partners' nations. To understand why that's true, we turn to the RAND Corporation, where they articulate to us that in some partner nations, there's internal opposition to overt military cooperation with the United States that will retaliate against Western powers. So when we pass, we tore families apart, their homes will be reduced to rubble, and violent groups will exploit their own people. Senator McCoy wanted to hear the net harm, and I just gave you a guaranteed one. But next, no one has actually been hearing the voice of who's actually in the Operation Prosperity Guardian. The Middle East Institute articulates to us that the Saudi regime benefits from secrecy around the external threat of its role and commitments and actually protecting their people. Senator Litchfield doesn't realize these countries are staying anonymous to protect their people, and that alone already outweighs the affirmation's impacts. This debate isn't a choice. It's whether you want security of our allies or the death of their people. So staying anonymous not only helps our allies with external threats, but also internal threats. But let's address a fundamental misconception in today's debate, that countries won't back out from Operation Prosperity Guardian when we pass. Senator Jiang says that the positions will just be replaced by Eastern powers. But what he fails to acknowledge is that that's actually a gradual process. But here's the problem with that. This will cause delays and potential disruptions, and it will put supplies of millions at risk. So when we pass, the impacts on the people triple-fold. First, with their safety, second, with the secrecy, and third, with the supplies they depend on. America portrays ourselves as the best country in the world, so we need to acknowledge where we fall short. This legislation suppresses our ideals along with our allies. There's no option in today's debate. Fail.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 59 seconds. I now call on 2 blocks of questioning. All questioners, please rise. This first goes to, among those standing, this first goes to Senator Chauhan.
Hi, Senator. So I'm on your side and just needed some clarification. Can you emphasize on the fact that resources are still being cooperated among the countries in the coalition, despite them being anonymous?
Yes. So essentially, by doing nothing, we keep the status quo. We keep the impacts, and then we still defeat Iran in the long run.
Exactly. So keeping anonymous has no net harm.
Correct.
Thank you. That's it.
The chair absorbs the remaining time. This next goes to Senator Pimersetti.
Okay, so Representative, how exactly are we putting these other nations at risk by removing their anonymity?
So I just told you there's violent groups in their countries that already said they're going to retaliate if they're working with the United States. If they're not unanimous, then the citizens will obviously know they're working with the United States. Those violent groups will retaliate. They already said they're going to.
Okay, so won't they just back out then?
If they back out, I already told you the net harms of backing out. It's gonna
Does
it's
every
gonna have
single
supply
nation have
disruption.
these retaliatory groups?
Senator, I already told you the supply disruptions is a net harm.
every single
Questioning time has elapsed. Senator speaking muted. Seeing as everyone has spoken on this bill, are there any motions at this time? Senator Sains.
I move to previous question.
Are there any seconds? All those in favor? More importantly, are there any opposed? Seeing none, this bill moves to previous question. Once again, I ask that you raise your placard and put it down once I say your name. All those who wish to pass this legislation, a bill to eliminate anonymous participation in Operation Prosperity Guardian, please raise your placards now. I count 1 Senator Bakai, 2 Senator Litchfield, 3 Senator Bremer-Setti, 4 Senator Zhang, and 5 Senator Zhang. All those who wish to fail, please rise. I count 1 Representative Dallaby, 2 Senator Ostheimer, 3 Senator Lee, 4 Senator Sains, 5 Senator Olson, 6 Senator Peel, and 7 Senator Chauhan. Are there any abstentions? There should be none. In a vote of 5 to 7, this bill does fail. My condolences to the sponsor, Senator Litchfield. Are there any motions? Senator Litchfield.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. I think that first goes to then orders of the day. So I'll just quickly run through that. I wasn't expecting the PO today, but I think we did a pretty good job, unlike Senator Litchfield's Riz. We got through 24 speeches. Everyone got to speak twice, and everyone gave at least 3 questions. We had in total 24 speeches and 55 questions. We got through 2 bills, one that we passed, the other we failed on a pretty small margin. So overall, great job, guys. And I'm glad to be your PO this session. Are there any motions now? Senator Litchfield.
Motion to finally adjourn.
Are there any seconds? All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, this chamber is adjourned.